Chapter 1. Reijou Irmgard Weitzna. You are a vile woman, a truly malicious creature unworthy of the crown prince. As of this instant our engagement is off, as you wish, your highness. The prince's declaration echoed throughout the ballroom. Reijou, the duke's daughter, bowed in response, her coral-toned hair swaying gracefully. The assembled guests found themselves captivated by her dignified beauty. Despite having just witnessed a broken engagement, they couldn't bring themselves to pity her. Slowly, Reijou lifted her head and fixed the prince with a pale emerald gaze. It caught him off guard, but he quickly recovered. Didn't you hear what I just said? I'm calling off our engagement. Doesn't that trouble you? Not really. Reijou already knew what happened next: false accusations, exile, and her family severing all ties and leaving her to survive on her own. She turned from the prince. There was no point wasting any time. This is my 7th loop, after all. Reijou had done this all before. The next few hours will be busy. I must hurry and retrieve my things before I'm barred from the family estate. I don't want this to be one of the times I'm too slow and I have to start my new life with nothing. Reijou, halt and hear me. I have spent the past week perfecting my recitation of your crimes. I should take more than dresses this time. There's plenty of things I could use out in the world. What trade should I take up? In my first life, I was a merchant. In my second, an apothecary. I've got a few more I want to try out. Ugh. If time's just going to keep resetting, I wish I could start at an earlier point. I need more time to prepare. Wait. Reijou, the crown prince, was on the verge of tears, and the spectators struggled to suppress their snickers. A thought occurred to Reijou, and she stopped. She then turned, her eyes gleaming beneath long lashes as she stared down her ex-fiancé. Ah, your highness, I almost forgot. Yes, tell me, the prince fumed. Let me guess, you are hurt beyond measure and yet love me still, correct? As if. Reijou was grateful to be granted her freedom. In fact, she was smiling as she said, I hope you and Lady Mary are happy together. What? May we both lead fulfilling lives. Farewell. Reijou lifted the skirts of her evening gown and turned on her heel, departing as briskly as she could. How do you know about Mary? I haven't told you I love her. The prince was shouting something behind her, but she paid him no mind. She had things to do. During her first loop, the prince's accusations had shocked her to the core, and she, foolishly so, had attempted to defend herself. Now she knew better than to expect the prince to behave reasonably. How will life unfold this time? I'm excited to find out. Reijou fixed her mind on the future. This is my 7th do-over. I've led happy and carefree lives before, but this time I swear I'll live a long, happy and carefree life. In other words, she needed to avoid getting killed. At any cost. In the first loop, with her engagement broken and her reputation in tatters, Reijou roamed with nothing but the clothes on her back. Fortuitously, she met a merchant caravan willing to buy her jewelry. Finding them a good-natured band, she hitched a ride to a neighboring country. From the merchant caravan, she learned a trade, studying how to procure stock and balance ledgers. Eventually, she set out on her own to travel the world. Her upbringing as a daughter of the nobility meant that, even at 15 years old, Reijou possessed a keen sense for beauty. She collected things that caught her eye and sold them to whoever found delight in her wares. Before she realized it, she had become a major vendor, employing a full staff. She had even done business with the king of a desert nation and the prince of a frozen country up north. She traveled to many distant places, realizing a dream born from her cosseted former life spent doing nothing but preparing to be queen. 5 years passed, and just as she had only one country left to visit, Reijou fell victim to the war sweeping across the continent. The next thing she knew, she was 15 years old again and back at that party, with the prince poised to make his pronouncement. Reijou Irmgard Weitzna. You are a vile woman, a truly malicious creature unworthy of the crown prince. As of this instant, our engagement is off. Naturally, she didn't understand what was going on at first. She looked around. Everything was the same. She stood in the same place wearing the same dress and draped in the same jewelry she'd sold to the caravan. Was it a dream? Or was everything that had happened up until then the dream? In her confusion, all she could do was stare. Reijou hurried out of the ballroom, the impending threat of exile hanging over her and the prince's entreaties to halt ringing in her ears. This is perfect. Now I can get it right. I'll grab everything valuable from my room. Reijou had enjoyed her life as a merchant, but she had always felt a stirring of regret about this night. If only she'd brought some funds from home, she would have had the capital to establish her business much sooner. Speaking of this regret always prompted disbelief from her customers, including the king of the desert. What? That's what you'd want to do over. When she arrived back at home on the night of her second life, Reijou grabbed her jewelry box and as many of the books her late grandmother had left her as she could carry, then made haste to the forest to meet the caravan. But the stop at her house took time, and she missed them completely. In that moment, Reijou made a stark realization. Different choices meant different mistakes. Opening one door would close another. And so the easy path to a life in commerce was closed to her. Sure, she could try to build her business from the ground up, but personal connections were almost as essential to being a merchant as business savvy. It just wasn't realistic without a single acquaintance. Sorting through her belongings in resignation, she came across a foreign encyclopedia of herbs among her grandmother's books. Taking it as a sign, Reijou sold her jewels elsewhere and used the funds to cross the sea and pursue the study of medicine. Fortunately, Reijou retained all her knowledge from her previous life. She remembered that certain expensive herbs could be acquired cheaply in other regions. When word spread of a disease running rampant in a neighboring country, she recalled that too. This foreknowledge proved invaluable, as did her wide travel and exposure to many different teachers with many different points of view. As such, Reijou led a successful life as an apothecary. She saved a feeble prince, synthesized a number of rare medicines with her mercantile knowledge, and thus spent her days in the simple joy of helping those in need. Unfortunately, all the joy in the world couldn't stand up to an epidemic. Thus ended her second life. Once again, she found herself in the moment of her broken engagement, the curtain rising on the third loop. Her next 4 lives proceeded much the same way. As a skilled lady's maid, she helped a young noblewoman to a fortuitous marriage. Once, she even disguised herself as a man and became a knight. Every life was worth living, and she enjoyed them all. She enjoyed living, period. There was just one problem. No matter what I do, I die at 20. She enjoyed her lives, but she was not permitted to do so for long. With this time limit always hanging over her, she spent each loop in a state of constant activity. I would love to take it easy for a while. Is a little leisure time too much to ask? Obviously, I don't want to die either. This time, I'll make as much money as I can in the first 5 years. Then when I turn 20, I'll live a life free of worldly cares. I'll do whatever's necessary to stay alive. Her mind made up, Reijou began her 7th life in a dead sprint through the palace. Regardless of her future plans, she was in a race against time. She needed to beat the messenger bearing news of her scandal. As she ran, she yanked off her hair ornaments. She planned to sell them and didn't want to risk losing one. Her hair billowed out behind her, falling in loose waves. Suddenly, an idea occurred to her, one she hadn't had in any of her previous 6 lives. Leaving through the palace gardens would be faster. I can climb down a tree from the balcony. Reijou had gone to war as a knight in the life just before this one. After the punishing battlefield training, climbing trees was nothing. Seamlessly, she changed direction. She raced for the balcony, where she ran into something at full speed. Warg, Reijou let out a very unladylike grunt, staggering a few steps. She looked up to see what she'd bounced off of. Oh, an exceptionally handsome man stood in her path. He had refined, patrician features and cruel, thin lips. He was slender yet powerful. Even through his clothes, Reijou could tell his body was well conditioned. His jet-black hair covered his ears, creeping down to the nape of his neck. The tips of his locks bounced with his movements. They looked to be soft to the touch. From head to toe, he was a pleasure to look at, but what held Reijou's attention were his eyes. They were long in shape and impossibly blue, but they possessed a blade-sharp intensity. His gaze was clear, beautiful, and cold as ice. His eyelashes cast shadows on his striking face. He was a work of art. Currently, this work of art was staring her down with a look that could kill. He laughed. You barreled right into me. For a moment, I thought I'd been attacked by a wild boar. It was an exceedingly rude thing to say to a stranger, but as luck would have it, this man was not a stranger. At least not to Reijou. What are you even doing here? The man went on. The party is in the... Reijou interrupted him with a wordless shout of dismay. The man drew back, reflexively reaching for his sword. He composed himself with visible difficulty. Who are you? You look like any noblewoman, but your manner is, Emperor Arnold Hein. The man's eyes widened. He didn't mistake her surging contempt. Reijou had crossed swords with this man. Recently. He was the one responsible for ending her 6th life. He must be a guest at the banquet. It makes sense. Arnold Hein was the scion of a military nation not far from Reijou's home country of Hermity, the one in which they now stood. Their kingdoms, so recently at war, had brokered an ostensible peace, and the two ruling families met from time to time. Crown Prince Dietrich's engagement party would be one such occasion. He'd gathered elites from far and wide to introduce to his beloved Mary. The man eyed Reijou with rising curiosity. You know me. This is my first time in Hermity. Oh. Reijou pasted on a smile as her mind spun in circles. This man was dangerous. She had to avoid entanglements with him at all costs. 5 years from now, Arnold Hein would invade Hermity. He was an extraordinarily skilled swordsman and, with a powerful military at his back, was destined to conquer kingdom after kingdom. He had done as much in her 2nd, 3rd, 4th, and 5th lives. In her 6th, Reijou had faced him in battle herself and died by his hand. We never had a chance. That war was lost before it began. Arnold's brilliance lay not in his swordplay but in his skill as a tactician. He set countries up for conquest and knocked them down, swallowing them one by one. I know him, but he doesn't know me. We haven't met in this life. I need an excuse fast. Reijou curtsied slowly. My name is Reijou Irmgard Weitzna. We've never been introduced, but I've heard of you. Arnold donned an amused smile. You plant your weight like a trained swordswoman. Your center of gravity is perfect. You exaggerate, Reijou demurred. That was simply a curtsy to an esteemed guest. I must have misheard, but I swear you called me emperor just now. Reijou froze. My father yet lives, Arnold said. I am simply a crown prince. Why would you call me that? Reijou floundered for an answer. She'd made such a foolish mistake. Arnold's gaze cut right through her. It felt like he'd see through any lie she told right down to her soul. She remembered this from the battlefield, how his attention alone felt like a sword thrust. But why even bother to lie? They'd never meet again, so who cared what he thought of her? Sure, she harbored a hard feeling or two over the recent slaying, but there was no point complaining about it to this Arnold. Calling him the emperor was boorish, but Reijou was in the process of being forcibly exiled. Why play at diplomacy? She took a deep breath and bowed low. This was not the curtsy of a noble lady, but of a servant bowing in supplication to her master. My humblest apologies, Your Highness. I was in a rush. Such a rude slip of the tongue. She raised her head. My ex-fiancé just annulled our engagement, so I've got a lot on my mind. If you would excuse me, he annulled your engagement. At that, Reijou turned and fled. This unexpected run-in with Arnold had taken up valuable time. She threw open the door to the balcony and hiked up her skirts, kicking off her shoes in anticipation of jumping into a tree. Looking down, she realized the ground was far closer than she'd feared. Excellent. I can just drop into the garden. Arnold, who up until now had been rendered speechless, shook himself out of his fugue as Reijou clambered over the railing. Hey, Reijou's moonlight silver dress flowed around her as she leapt. The lawn was soft, but the fall was still far enough to risk injury. Weight evenly distributed on the soles of my feet, rolled to transfer the impact to my shins and thighs, then onto my hips and my back. She landed safely, rolled nimbly in her dress, and popped back up. Her hair was covered in leaves. I need to hurry up. Bracing against a nearby rock, she used her weight to snap the heels off of her shoes. There, that would make running a little easier. Satisfied, she slipped them back on and made haste toward the family estate. Up on the balcony, Crown Prince Arnold of Galkeen watched the spectacle play out from beginning to end. He gazed at the girl with the coral hair. Her appearance was that of any young noblewoman, but she moved like a well-trained knight. She'd leapt from the balcony and landed skillfully, showing no signs of distress at her ripped dress or disheveled hair. Instead, she'd knocked the heels off her shoes and dashed away. Also, she had called him an emperor. Playing it all over again in his head, Arnold broke out into a rare chuckle. As his shoulders quivered with laughter, his attendant approached him from behind. "There you are, Your Highness. What are you doing out here? I'm aware you don't desire a wife, but beginning the search would be wise, Your Highness." The attendant's eyes flew wide. His bored and scowling master was laughing. "Did something happen? Oliver, ready my coach." "Wait, no. That will take too much time. Bring me a horse at once, Your Highness." "Might I ask why?" Arnold didn't respond. He just grinned like a hungry wolf catching scent of his prey. Once outside the palace gates, Reijou threw herself into the waiting coach, shouting for the driver to make haste. She stopped at a few hundred yards from the manor and bid him farewell. "I'm leaving. Thanks for always being such a safe driver, Daniel." The road to the manor was muddy from a morning rain shower. She knew from her second life that the coach would get stuck, resulting in a loss of valuable time. It was better to just get out and run. Huff huff, despite her last life's physical conditioning, this body had no stamina. She'd need to try to get fitter faster this time around. Reijou reached the end of the road, and her heart promptly sank all the way to her feet. Oh no, the front door was thronged with people, all of them surrounding a carriage bearing the royal family's coat of arms. "I need to get out of here." While she stood frozen in indecision, one of the knights doing crowd control shouted, "Your Highness." "I have eyes on Lady Reijou, get out of my way," a familiar voice started up a bellow. "Let me through." "Reijou, how dare you make me wait so long?" Reijou's ex-fiancé, Crown Prince Dietrich, stepped triumphantly forward. "I know the thought of hearing your crimes enumerated by the man you love must pain you, but alas, as future king, it is my duty to bring down the hammer of justice upon a villainess such as yourself." "I see I've timed it badly," Reijou muttered. "In fact, this is my worst loop yet. I'd rather be barred from the house than see you again." "What are you grumbling about?" Dietrich looked Reijou up and down. "I knew it. You put on a brave face, but I can sense the sorrow in your heart." "I beg your pardon, your heart," the prince repeated. "Your heart? It must be absolutely crushed." "Because I called off our engagement." Reijou wasn't sure where he was drawing these conclusions from. Possibly the same place he mined for all his bottomless self-confidence. "I can tell you've been wandering aimlessly, distraught," the prince went on. "Look at you. Your dress is caked in mud, your shoes are broken, and there are cuts marring your face and arms. What other possible cause could there be than heartbreak?" Reijou narrowed her eyes. "Do you ever stop to think about the words coming out of your mouth?" "What?" His interpretation of events was fanciful to the point of absurdity. "I did not dirty my dress or snap my shoes out of heartbreak." "Because I feel none." "You've always been a little slow, so I'll make this clear. I do not have a single shred of fondness for you or for our broken engagement." "What?" the prince said. "What are you saying?" The surrounding crowd began to snicker. "Isn't that the crown prince? Did Lady Reijou just dump him?" "Wait, but wasn't he trying to dump her?" "Can't be. Look at her. She doesn't care at all. How dare you nobodies make sport of me?" Dietrich screeched. "I am your prince." Temper aside, Dietrich was a handsome man. He had azure blue eyes and blonde hair, a prince straight out of a picture book. His looks and place in the succession meant a never-ending swarm of women vying for his affections. He was brought up a pampered princeling, never wanting for anything. It manifested in a pompous manner and an overconfidence in his own abilities. Reijou had cautioned him about his attitude before, but he never paid her any mind. I'm so glad I don't have to marry him. She wished she could go back and tell the shocked, scared girl from her first life not to worry about her shattered engagement. Still, she might as well say it all here and now, with the assembled knights and citizens to bear witness. Your Highness, you exist to love and protect your people. It's unbecoming to speak of them in this manner. You're the unbecoming one, the prince snapped. Beg me for forgiveness, I won't. Calling off our betrothal is the best course, and I applaud your Highness for your good sense. Now even the knights were trembling with suppressed mirth. Dietrich was turning red. Don't laugh at me, Lady Reijou, came a sweet voice. Aren't you ashamed of yourself? Reijou fought down a groan. Out of the crowd stepped a charming, dainty girl. Her big eyes moist with tears, she took her place at Dietrich's side. I do not allow the people I care about to be treated so very ill. Why, Lady Mary? You're here, Reijou sighed. How nice, the young Mary scowled through her tears. Hidden behind her skirts, Dietrich continued to shout his disapproval. Reijou, you've brought my beloved Mary to tears. She's told me everything. How you bullied her, ridiculed her. How you find it amusing to lock her in the classroom overnight. Such a wicked woman could never be queen, none of that's true. Reijou glanced at Mary, who averted her gaze a little awkwardly. More importantly, Reijou said, have you already brought your concerns to my parents, your Highness? More importantly. I did, if you must know. Your parents are furious. They have vowed to disown you. Ah. Then I'm too late. Her parents held their reputation above all else. Reijou had little hope of retrieving any of her money or belongings now. Why are you acting so strangely? Dietrich sniffed. Ah, I understand. You're in such shock from this turn of events that, listen, Dietrich. In her exasperation, Reijou dropped his title. I accept your decree. We are no longer engaged. I shall never darken your doorstep again. So relax a little, huh? What are you saying? Since I was a child, I believed that my only value was in our betrothal. Being engaged to the crown prince was my whole reason for living. I was wrong about that. Only I determine my value, no one else. That's why I don't care about this. I'm beyond it. Reijou made sure to look him directly in the eye as she spoke. You are an unnecessary element in my life. Dietrich staggered back. His legs seemed to go out from under him, and he crumpled. At that, the knights finally let go of their composure, laughing along with the courtiers. Sen stop, the prince wailed. You are my subjects. This shows such flagrant disrespect. Dietrich, don't pay them any mind, Lady Mary said. Lady Reijou, is this cruelty necessary? Perhaps this is a blessing in disguise. Reijou's attention moved to Mary, making the girl's slender shoulders jump. She had no reason to worry. Reijou didn't bite. I've been wanting the opportunity to speak to you, Lady Mary. You're strong. I admire you very much. What are you talking about? You're a lovely girl who never fails to smile despite your troubles. You don't put up walls around your heart, and you do your utmost to put others at ease. Even now, you bravely stand before me to protect the prince. Mary's eyes were wide with confusion. Reijou picked her words carefully, attempting to diminish the girl's guilty feelings, if only a little. You need to marry the prince for your family's sake, right? How do you? Reijou had learned this truth in one of her past lives. Mary was born to a poor family, and she had studied like mad to be accepted into the academy to hunt for a husband. She intended to make sure neither she nor her brothers ever went hungry again. She went on, remember this, you are the one in control of your life. Don't sell it to anyone else. Can you trust a man who so easily discards the woman he's been engaged to since childhood? Do you truly believe he cares for you? Astonishment bloomed across Mary's face. She looked over at Dietrich, who hadn't bothered to stand up. The truth was, within a year, Prince Dietrich would be in prison, his title stripped from him. He would plan a mad coup d'etat against the king, attempting to provoke the citizens to war. His plan would be discovered in its early stages, rendering him a laughingstock across the kingdom. You must shape your future with your own hands. You mustn't entrust your desires to others. My desires. Reijou nodded. Mary was looking at her like she was speaking a foreign language. But I'm their elder sister, her voice quivered. I must endure no matter what. Otherwise my brothers will never be happy, and you believe their happiness can only be achieved by sacrificing your own, Mary gasped as she gaped at Reijou. You don't need to throw away your own future to protect those you love, Reijou told her. No matter what path you choose, never forget that. My future, Mary's voice went ragged like she was barely suppressing a wail of pain. I wish you a life where both you and your family can be happy, said Reijou. Mary stood frozen in place, eyes gleaming like precious stones. Reijou couldn't help but admire how pretty she was. She truly did wish her happiness. But right now, she needed to take care of herself. Well, Reijou suddenly broke into a smile, making Dietrich flinch. I think it's time for me to be on my way. She regretted losing access to her room, but she knew her parents wouldn't let her in. Turning her back on the crowd, Reijou contemplated her next move. Wait, Lady Reijou, Mary's voice rang out. That's right. You're not going anywhere, Reijou, the prince joined her. You won't get away with treating me like trash to relieve your own injured heart. Ugh, enough already, Reijou's patience was fraying. I don't have anything else to say to you. Goodbye, knights, stop her. Reluctantly, the knights moved to tail Reijou as she walked briskly back down the path. She sympathized with them, but she wasn't about to let them keep her here. Rounding a corner, she sensed something uncanny. She stopped, the knights quickly catching up with her. My apologies, Lady Reijou. If you could please remain for just a whoa. Reijou grabbed the hilt of the knight's sword. Yanking it from his belt, she spun around and stood at the ready. Metal rang against metal as Reijou parried a blow. She glared at her would-be attacker as he stepped out of the shadows. Arnold Hind. Well, what do you know? The man smiling so sweetly while their swords locked was the very man who had ended her life. You do have some skill. Metal screeched and slid before Arnold sheathed his sword. Reijou lowered hers. Neither looked away. Who the hell are you? Demanded one of the knights. Stand down, good sirs, Reijou said. Your interference will only make this worse. This mostly served to befuddle the knights further. Reijou absolutely couldn't allow them to come to blows with the crown prince of a friendly nation. And they couldn't beat him, not even if they took him all at once. Reijou had blocked his blow, but her arm was completely numb. To think he'd be even more powerful in 5 years. He regarded her unabashedly. Reijou, was that your name? Where did you learn such swordsmanship? I'm afraid I cannot say. Besides, you were clearly going easy on me. Ha! You could tell Arnold's manner was throwing her off. He seemed to be enjoying himself. He's laughing. This monstrous prince is actually laughing. When she had met him in her other life, he was cold and merciless, like a genuine monster. And yet here he stood, mellow and smiling. The Emperor Arnold Hein I knew was 24 years old, so he's, what? 19 now. This is so weird. He's grinning like a boy getting into a scrape. That attack had been good-natured as well, almost playful. It had muscle behind it, but certainly not any lethal intent. He just wanted to force Reijou to catch the blow. She found it unbelievable that he could exude such an overpowering air of menace when he was just messing around. While Reijou was focused on Arnold, Mary and Dietrich caught up, seemingly recovered. Excuse me, my lord, Mary squeaked. I don't know who you are, but kindly step away from Lady Reijou. Yes, do as she says. Who the hell are you, anyway? Don't tell me Prince Dietrich doesn't recognize one of his personal guests. Dietrich's interests did not lean toward diplomacy. He likely hadn't bothered to introduce himself to Arnold. Mary, for her part, seemed to grasp that Arnold wasn't ordinary. She stood up to defend Reijou, despite the tremble in her voice. In a better world, perhaps the two of them could have become friends. That's your ex-fiancé, Arnold cocked a brow. He's even worse than I imagined. Pathetic, Dietrich flushed. I'll have your head, Dietrich, I beg of you contain yourself, Reijou said, then rounded on Arnold. As for you, your highness, you know who Dietrich is, and you know what speaking carelessly could mean. Are you trying to pick a fight? Whatever do you mean? Arnold's brows lifted high, making him the picture of innocence. "Believe me, Lady Reijou, every word I speak is chosen with extreme care." Finally realizing who Arnold was, Dietrich visibly paled. "Arnold? He's the crown prince of Galkine," Mary yelped. The knight stood down, shamefaced. The gossip-hungry neighbors, who'd gathered to witness a scandal play out, drew back in fear. "He is the demon prince. The one who single-handedly destroyed a whole order of enemy knights. Watch your tongue, fool. Do you want him to do the same to you?" The two nations enjoyed peaceful relations, but Arnold remained the dreaded prince, heir to the throne of a former enemy. Current rumor wasn't as widespread as it would be in 5 years, but he was still regarded with distrust. The onlookers stood rooted to the spot, too terrified to flee. Well, this has devolved into a full-fledged disaster. Reijou heaved a frustrated sigh. "Prince Arnold, to what do we owe this honor? Surely a crown prince would not draw his sword for a mere jest." "I'm here on business," Arnold said. "But first I must beg forgiveness for my rudeness." What do you know? Once he became emperor, he'd gladly behead any subject who so much as dared speak a word against him. I guess at 19 he still knew how to apologize. If that surprised her, Arnold's next act completely obliterated her sense of reality. With a flourish, he fell to his knees. Is this actually happening? He was a man destined for an imperial crown. A man who would stand at the head of a military powerhouse and spread his rule across continents. Arnold, known for his frigid pride, knelt to the disgraced daughter of a duke. And not only that, his head was bowed, looking nothing so much as a knight swearing allegiance to his lady. If it were anyone else, it would be a delightful, pious image. Instead, the assembled looked on in terrified awe. Not Reijou, though. "What are you doing?" she hissed. "Get up, I'm apologizing for my baseless impertinence. Also, I'm asking you." He trailed off to take Reijou's hand, tugging her forward so forcefully she staggered. He gazed up at her. Ugh, he's so beautiful. No matter how many times she looked at him, it didn't become any less disarming. Long eyelashes, arched brows, a noble nose. His bright blue eyes reminded her of the drift ice she'd seen in a northern kingdom, gazing out from a ship in one of her past lives. She knew she was dwelling on this to buy time, even as the reality before her sank in. "To become my wife," she froze, unable to process the words. "What?" Reijou glanced around, desperately searching the faces of the crowd. They all seemed as stunned as she felt. She looked down at Arnold again. "Your wife, yes, that's right. You want me to become your wife?" "Yes," Reijou couldn't speak. This was truly happening. It was real. It clicked into place in her head, and she let out a strangled grunt. What is going on? Why is this happening? Shock lapped at her, fuzzing at the corners of her vision. He wanted to marry her. Arnold wanted to marry Reijou. Her murderer wanted to marry her. Why is he doing this? He must have some ulterior motive, a broader goal. But I have to give him an answer. The onlookers were holding their breath as Reijou said flatly, "I reject your proposal." Arnold said nothing. She had to reject him. She was going to live a long, peaceful, carefree life, damn it, and no one would stop her. And yet Arnold began to laugh, and the deep, creeping sense of dread inside Reijou only grew. Why does he seem so amused by this? Her previous life was her 6th. Disguised as a man, Reijou rose as a warrior of an island country she came upon in her travels. It was a conventional yet charming kingdom formed of red brick. After striking up a friendship with a group of knights who didn't realize she was a woman, Reijou followed their advice and joined them. The training was grueling enough to make her wish she were dead. Back when she had lived as a noble, she'd learned how to wield a sword for basic self-defense, but training as a noble lady had in no way prepared her for this. She drilled relentlessly, barely taking the time to sleep. Just as she became a full-fledged knight, Emperor Arnold's forces lay siege to the castle. How could this happen? In her 7th life, Reijou wearily sank into her chair. Across from her sat Arnold, his legs crossed and chin propped up on his hand, watching her lazily. "What's the matter?" he asked. "You seem unhappy." "You could say that." Even her voice was grumpy. Still, she couldn't very well tell him it was because she bore a grudge from a previous life. After the first time her life rewound to that pivotal moment, she'd resolved to keep her loops a secret. I had plans for my exile. A brand new life. And now because of you, my parents are involved. Even the king has heard about it. After Reijou rejected Arnold, Dietrich had immediately cried out, the crown prince of Galkine proposed to Reijou. His shrieks were loud enough to attract the attention of the master and mistress of the manor. When her parents came out, Reijou had protested, I'm not going to marry him. I'm leaving the country just as Dietrich commanded. No one listened. Their faces just paled with nervous confusion. Just then, a glittering coach arrived. Half stuck in the mud, the man inside it was forced to trudge over the swampy ground, and so the king of Hermity himself arrived, staggering and dirt-stained. He grabbed hold of his son's collar, pushing him into a low bow. He then turned to Prince Arnold and said rather loudly, Your Highness, allow me to apologize for my son's foolishness. You are an esteemed guest all the way from Galkine. It is unthinkable he would not offer you the courtesy you are due. You're hurting me, father. My back, the king then turned to Reijou. My lady, allow me to sincerely apologize as both a king and a father. My son's behavior toward you has been utterly disgraceful. I beg you to please give Prince Arnold's proposal due consideration. Not only for your own sake but for the sake of your country. The king bowed to her as deeply as his son had to Arnold, and her parents joined him. Reijou felt dizzy at the sight of this abject debasement in the presence of citizens. Arnold, who had been watching the proceedings with a detached amusement, sobered and stepped toward the king. Your Majesty, please rise. Without the smirk, Arnold's face immediately reverted to its cold mask. The king didn't move. Maybe something in Arnold's voice kept him frozen. Such a trifle won't cause discord between our kingdoms, he went on. However, I would beg a little time to speak with Lady Reijou. Later, Reijou would learn that Arnold's attendant had spoken to the king's own gentleman, certain that his words would reach their target. My master took such trouble to attend these festivities, and this is the welcome he has offered. I wonder what will the emperor think when he learns of his sons sliding at your nation's hands. If you would, Lady Reijou. The plump king looked to be on the verge of tears. Reijou had no obligation to accept, and no desire to spend a moment longer in this country than was absolutely necessary. But acquiescence seemed the fastest way to move things along. As her mind whirled, Arnold leaned in to whisper, If you refuse to hear my suit, you won't deter me. I'll simply move on to Plan B, and that was how she found herself in one of the palace's parlors, here to just talk to Prince Arnold. The ball guests were all gone. It was just the two of them. I want to know what you're planning, Reijou said flatly. Planning? Me, by asking me to marry you. You don't know me. A proposal like this wouldn't come out of the blue. This man was destined to become an aggressive warmonger over the next few years. He wouldn't do anything without a dozen motives. Prince Arnold just smiled. I have no plans. I'm simply enamored with you. Enamored, that was the last thing she'd expected him to say. Asking him to elaborate didn't seem worth the breath. He was obviously lying. As if this ruthless, inhuman creature with ice in his veins could feel even a flicker of affection. Why refuse me? Arnold asked. Your engagement is broken, you're on the verge of exile, and you have no faction or supporters. At this rate, you'll be dead within a fortnight. I'd call my offer a stroke of unbelievable fortune. You're not wrong, Reijou admitted. Once upon a time, I would have jumped at your offer, if it had been made in her first life, for instance. But now Reijou knew better. Her life was only just getting started, and the future held endless possibilities. After the horror of her sixth loop, she yearned for freedom. I don't want to marry him. I won't be anyone's captive. Still, Reijou, more than anyone, knew that the slightest adjustment could enact profound changes on the trajectory of a life. No doubt she'd have many more lives, but this could be the only one where marriage to Arnold would be an option. The dread emperor, the tyrant, the man who will stoke the fires of war. Reijou knew the gossip, the endless conjecture behind Arnold Hine's bloody reign, but she didn't know the truth. Why? The question had haunted her since her first life. She'd never before had the chance to even speak to him. She had wondered it as a merchant, hearing of the distant outbreak of war. She'd wondered when the news of the dead and dying reached her apothecary. When she had comforted her terrified mistress in her life as a maid, assuring her everything would be all right. When she squared off against him in battle as he plunged a sword through her heart, even then she wondered. If I stick around, maybe I'll finally have my answer. Half of her was dying to know. The other half didn't give a damn. And yet she recalled a childhood dream. Rather, a longing. Reijou let out a breath. You claim you are enamored with me. Yes. I am completely under your spell. To think he could spout such nonsense with a straight face. Then will you grant me anything I desire, so long as it is within my power, Arnold said. Anything you want will be yours. Reijou hesitated, gathering her thoughts. I have some conditions. Arnold silently motioned for her to go on. I want full control over the wedding festivities. Everything must be procured through merchants of my choosing. Fine, Arnold nodded. You're free to do business with whomever you wish. After we are married, I must be in a position to mingle with guests from abroad. That sounds within the purview of the crown princess. Anything else, I will be allowed to live in a separate residence from your mother and father. She meant this seriously, but it made Arnold laugh. You don't seem the type to worry about an overbearing mother-in-law. You would be surprised. Combative relationships with one's new family are the most difficult part of marriage, or so they say. It could be a ramshackle cottage for all I care. I just require a secondary residence. Actually, Reijou didn't care at all about in-laws. When Arnold set his war into motion, his first move would be the assassination of his father. A genuine coup by patricide, not at all like Dietrich's clumsy attempt. Next, he would name himself emperor, take control of the country, and mobilize the military. Separating him from his parents will make the first step more difficult, although not impossible, unfortunately. Anything else? Arnold asked. I'll do whatever it takes to marry you. Ideally, I'd like to know your end game, Reijou said with dignity. But as I doubt there's any chance of that, I have one final request. She jabbed a finger into his face, regardless of how rude it was. I will spend my time idling around the castle. No work, no study. I shall be utterly useless. Let's see just how much you want me as your princess. After a long moment of silence, Arnold cracked a merry laugh. The proposal remained, all her conditions were met. Chapter 2. You know, it was only after I went into commerce that I truly had a dream for the future, Reijou had once confided in a friend. Up until then, I existed only as the crown prince's fiancée or my father's daughter. My every act was to become more worthy of that status. But now, for the first time, I actually have a goal of my own. Oh yeah, her friend said. He was the ruler of the desert kingdom, and his smile was awfully charming. What's that? Reijou smiled back. I want to travel to every single country in the world. I want to see everything in every town, peruse their markets, and meet the eyes of every person who lives there. By now, that felt like such a distant dream. Reijou awoke with a start, eyes snapping open as she sensed a disturbance in the air. She unsheathed her sword halfway, primed for danger. Inside the coach, her old enemy sat across from her, one hand outstretched. What do you think you're doing? She demanded. When they'd boarded the coach, Reijou had warned him not to lay a single finger on her throughout the trip to his kingdom. Ordering the prince not to touch his consort was absurd, but Arnold readily agreed. He had, after all, promised to follow her every direction. And yet here he was, already breaking his promise. Arnold appeared unperturbed by her glare. Don't look at me like that. I was merely trying to recover what you took from me. Confused, Reijou looked at the sword in her hand. It had a black lacquered scabbard with a simple golden decoration. Engraved on the hilt was the Galkeen crest. Oh, Reijou thrust the sword back at Arnold. My apologies, Arnold chuckled. You caught me off guard. You were nodding off, and then you suddenly snatched up my sword. You looked quite content snuggling up with it. Arnold propped the sword beside him. Reijou pressed a hand to her chest to quell her racing heart. The sword that gutted me in my previous life is now my bedmate. What a world! Her recent stint as a knight had left her ill at ease without a blade at hand. She just couldn't believe it was Arnold's she'd reached for. I didn't mean to disturb you, but I doubted sleeping with a weapon would be comfortable. I'm impressed you sensed my intent before I even touched you. Arnold rested one elbow against the window frame, watching her with shameless fascination. One only develops instincts like that from combat training. And you were also a member of the court. How in the world did you find the time? Reijou shrugged. She couldn't just say, I pretended to be a man in a previous life, that's how. I assume there's more to you than your devotion to the sword. You seem to like flowers. She followed Arnold's gaze to where she'd bundled a small bouquet in a handkerchief. This was their 5th day on the road to Galkeen. Every day without fail, she'd picked flowers whenever they stopped to water the horses. The ones from today were still fresh, but the ones she'd begun drying 5 days ago were just about ready. I didn't pick these because they are pretty. Reijou brought the blooms to her face, spirits rising at their sweet scent. Spring wildflowers had a soft and gentle smell. Reijou looked out the window at the forest spreading toward Galkeen, thinking of the rare native flowers going into bloom. She wished she could pick those as well, but that would cause too much delay. She gazed on wistfully. After watching her in silence for some time, Arnold said, By the way, I sent one of my men ahead on a fast horse to deliver your order to the company you requested. They'll be invited to Galkeen to discuss the wedding ceremony. Thank you, Reijou said. I'm glad you kept your word, the area trading company, Arnold mused. I've heard of them. They're up-and-comers, aren't they? Have you done business with them before? No, but I heard from a friend that they hold a very high standard of quality. Reijou was pleasantly surprised at how easily Arnold had acceded to her request. Typically, a royal household had their own personal dealer. Getting them to do business with someone else could be difficult. I want to establish a connection with area as soon as possible, Reijou thought. It was, of course, the company that had taken her in during her first life. The company had been established just 2 years prior to picking her up by its owner, a man named Tully. They were still in their growth stage, but in just a few years, they would be the grandest trading company in all the world. They'd proven a great boon in her life as an apothecary as well, helping to distribute her newest medicines. She'd struggled to win their trust initially, but she pledged to work much harder this time around. This marriage isn't going to happen. I need an escape plan for when it all falls apart. I must bring to bear all my knowledge and influence as a crown princess. Reijou didn't know Arnold's plans, but she had no intention of sitting around and waiting for him to use her as he pleased. She'd spend her time as his consort wisely. Everything must serve her ultimate goal, to live longer than 5 years and live well. Her fierce determination must have shown on her face because Arnold gave her a little bemused smile. Yes, God. Reijou grimaced at that flawlessly handsome countenance. Such beauty possessed by such powerful destruction. The fact that he'd been the man to kill her did nothing to lessen her fascination. In fact, it almost made it worse. The study of contrasts. Sorry, she was interrupted by the horse's loud whinnies. Stop. Hey, stop the coach. Shouts drifted back from conveyance ahead of theirs, which contained the luggage and attendants. The squadron of knights tailing the column of coaches sped off toward the front. Who do you think you Grauarg? That didn't sound good. Reijou moved to climb out, but Arnold was faster. He drew his sword. Hey, Arnold locked the door from the outside. Stay hidden, why is he putting himself in danger? That's what knights are for. The fact that Reijou had been about to do the same thing didn't occur to her. It's probably bandits. He told me to stay hidden in here, but I'm not so sure about that. Arnold had left her locked in from the outside, hoping to keep her safe, but Reijou didn't like her odds. There were 5 coaches, but this one was certainly the grandest. It locked on the inside as well, but that wouldn't stop someone with enough determination. If she did as she was told, she'd just be waiting patiently for a bandit to break a window and drag her out. Keeping one eye on the coachmen fleeing into the forest, Reijou began a methodical search for something to help her. Right, her hairpin. This sure brings me back. She unfastened it, twisting it into the gap in the door. Back when I was a maid, my lady would lock herself in her chambers all the time to avoid her studies. I had to break her out just like this. The lock on the coach was simple, and it came open easily. Once she was free, she scanned her surroundings. She didn't see anyone who looked immediately hostile, but there was noise up ahead. Cautiously, she headed toward it. Before long, she found Arnold. Wow! Roughly 10 men, the bandits, she presumed, lay crumpled on the ground. In their midst stood Arnold, in the process of tripping another man into the dirt. He scowled, blade at the man's throat. Is that it then, Gwug? Arnold kicked the bandit in the stomach, eyes blazing with cruelty. That's all the thrill you offer me after I went to the trouble of drawing my sword. Barely worth it. I'm bored already. He wasn't angry, on the contrary, he stared his enemies down with chilly disappointment, as if this had all been a letdown. Even Arnold's own knights seemed terrified of their master when he was in a mood. Arnold smoothly flicked the blood off his sword, wiping the blade on the bandit's shirt before sheathing it. The rest of the men on the ground seemed to be unconscious. Wait, he didn't kill anyone. Why not? Is it because we haven't reached Galkeen? She supposed even Arnold knew better than to go around killing the citizens of other countries. Or perhaps he had yet to become the ruthless monster she knew him as. Arnold seemed to sense her gaze, turning around with a start. Genuine emotion bloomed on his face, worlds away from the blank mask he wore to face down the bandits. How did you get out of the coach? Reijou shrugged. If I tell you, you'll be able to prevent me from doing it again. Arnold snickered. You continue to amaze me. How can you go from ice cold to suddenly looking like a normal 19-year-old? It's disconcerting. Reijou fought down her disquiet as a man alighted from a coach and shouted, Your Highness. Not again, he was Oliver, one of the prince's attendants. He had silver hair and was roughly as tall as Arnold. What do you think all these knights are for, decoration? Why do you insist on endangering yourself? Reijou had only met Oliver briefly a few days ago, but he didn't appear to be intimidated by Arnold at all. And well, he's not wrong. She feared the menace would return to Arnold's expression, but he just looked annoyed. I could tell they were prepared to kill. I'd prefer to take the burden on myself than risk multiple injuries so far afield. And we already have casualties, he was right. Several injured knights leaned listlessly among the trees. Arnold issued orders to those still able-bodied. First squad, see to the wounded. Second squad, arrest these men. Yes, sir. Oliver appeared unsatisfied. Your Highness, that is a weak justification. I'm overjoyed you're well, but you must consider Lady Reijou. Perhaps next time we run into a team of murderous brigands, you could allow your consort to remain in the coach. I told her to remain in the coach. Reijou quickly averted her gaze, turning her attention to the wounded knights. They didn't appear badly injured, yet they all seemed exhausted. Excuse me, can I take a look? Reijou approached the knight acting as a medic. He looked round, startled by her presence. Nonsense, my lady. Don't trouble yourself, you must have had quite a scare. This was not unreasonable, but the wariness in his eyes made it clear he wanted her nowhere near his comrade. He isn't just being polite. He truly is on guard. Beside them, an injured knight groaned as another helped him up. What's wrong with you? The second knight asked the first. I feel numb. What? Damn, the knight grabbed up one of the fallen bandit's swords, going pale as he inspected the blade. Your Highness, look at this. Poison, Arnold clicked his tongue. Locate every laceration and bind them close to the heart. Suck the poison from the wounds. He mostly got that right, at least. In the meantime, Reijou located the nearest bound bandit and pulled his dagger out of its sheath. Its wet coating gleamed in the sunlight, just as the knight had said. They applied the poison liberally. Whatever it is must be cheap and easily bought in bulk. She wafted the smell toward her, bracing for something rancid, but detected nothing. Then she brought it closer to her nose. It smells sweet like an overripe apple. Shea grass and bluecap mushrooms. All the knights appear to have the same symptoms, so I won't have to check every blade. Reijou stood back up and headed for the coach. Oliver took a step after her. Your Highness, Lady Reijou is, leave her. She may do as she pleases. She's well trained, Oliver mused. But a battlefield is no place for a young lady. She probably wasn't prepared for such a dreadful spectacle. Reijou ignored the murmurs and focused on her work. There they are. I'll take these, and the poison must be a sleeping drug, she overheard Arnold saying. Hunters use such drugs to weaken larger prey. I doubt this dose is lethal, but it certainly is annoying, replied Oliver. We're still 2 days out from Galkeen. Lugging a company of sleeping men in armor won't be pleasant. We'll have to stop somewhere nearby. A hunter's settlement. Perhaps they will have an antidote, excuse me. Reijou, who'd returned from the carriage, raised a hand. I have an antidote, what? The entire company stared at her in awe. As it turned out, Arnold's guess was right. This sweet-smelling substance was a hunter's drug, made from ingredients that were only toxic in their raw form. Heat rendered them harmless. Reijou had encountered this poison several times before, curing a customer afflicted with it during her life as an apothecary. A lethal dose for a grown man would fill a wine glass. They likely got less than 1/100th of that, Reijou explained to Arnold, not looking up from her work. Still, the numbness can block their airways with the roots of their tongues. It's best to lay them on their sides. Yes, I understand the theory and the solution. Arnold gazed down at Reijou's hands. The part I'm struggling with is why you're the one telling me this. Well, I know how to make the antidote, Reijou said patiently as she muddled the herbs together in the white soup bowl she'd borrowed for her flowers. She crushed them with the back of a spoon before adding another dried flower, crushing that as well, and combining them to form a paste. This process would be easier with a pestle, but she wasn't about to complain. This poison is common, it's cheap and easy to make, which often means the antidote is simple as well. The antidote was synthesized, in fact, when hunters witnessed a deer showing no symptoms after eating a certain mushroom. They tested those along with other common herbs the deer ate. Reijou mentally thanked them for their scientific rigor as she added a bit of water, straining it all through a cloth. Reijou stood up, brandishing the bowl of bright green medicine. Boiling would make the antidote more potent, but this works in a pinch. That was when she noticed the astonished stares. Unsure of what social faux pas she'd perpetrated, she looked away. Oliver was completely stunned. Arnold looked thoughtful. It was imperative the knights were treated as soon as possible, but to Reijou's dismay, no one was moving. Do they not trust me? That makes sense. Anyone would be reluctant to use medicine concocted by a complete stranger. But the longer we wait, the harder the poison will become to cure. She needed to dispel their doubts. Rolling up her sleeve, Reijou approached Arnold and drew his sword from its scabbard. I need to borrow this for a moment, Your Highness. What are you? She pushed the blade against the soft skin of her inner arm. Blood welled up along with the sharp sting of pain. Nothing compared to her injuries sustained during her life as a knight, though. Arnold did not share her nonchalance. What do you think you're doing? He grabbed for her arm. She stepped out of his grasp. Was blood truly so shocking? She didn't have the time to worry about it. Clutching the overfull bowl, Reijou hurried back to the knights. Don't worry. This isn't poison, Reijou said. She demonstrated as much by drizzling it with a spoon over her own fresh wound. It stung. That meant the ingredients were working. This is crushed licorice grass, lukwa flowers, and carelia nuts. I'll swallow some if that's what it takes to prove it's safe. It was horribly bitter, she hoped it wouldn't come to that. The paralysis will last for days. Please make up your mind quickly. Make up our mind, will you allow me to cure the poison? Or would you rather drag paralyzed soldiers all the way to Galkeen? I suppose you could waste His Highness's time searching for a hunter's settlement to use their antidote. She smiled serenely. It makes no difference to us. Right, Your Highness. In the end, Reijou applied the antidote. The recovery took a few hours. While they waited, Reijou picked herbs in the same meadow she'd been gazing at with yearning from the carriage. A fortuitous turn of events. She found anti-inflammatory herbs and flowers to ease sour bellies, ingredients for curing headaches, and mushrooms for inducing slumber. She wrapped them all up in a handkerchief. In the meantime, Arnold dispatched a messenger to this region's lord, making arrangements to deliver the apprehended bandits. After coordinating with Oliver, he drifted over to Reijou. "I see your interest in flowers is mercenary rather than ornamental," he said, surveying the heaps of herbs gathered on the bank of the pond. He sat down beside her. When he didn't say anything more, Reijou went back to work plucking leaves from plants with valuable stems. The leaves had no medicinal effects, but they did make a decent broth. Slumber mushroom spores were a nuisance unless dried. They were spread out beside her in the sun. "I wonder, would he be annoyed if I attached herbs to the roof of the coach? That would be unusual adornment for a crown prince's retinue, but it wouldn't hurt to ask." She realized quite suddenly that Arnold was looking at her. At her hands specifically. He sat cross-legged with his chin propped on his fist, staring absently, like a kid watching a column of ants march by. "What is so fascinating about herbs?" Their eyes met. "Am I bothering you?" he asked. Reijou shook her head slowly. "Not at all. I was just curious what caught your eye, nothing specific. I was just thinking how very unusual you are." He was smiling again. "I'm looking forward to how you'll surprise me next, like I'm some sort of rare pet he bought to entertain him." She didn't like that. Nothing she'd done was at all remarkable, normal tasks performed by a normal person. "I didn't make that antidote for your amusement. I realize that." The instigating smile faded from his lips. "You know, those nights you coerced into taking your home-brewed medicine were all born in the slums." Coerced. That's hardly the word I'd use. Galkeen claims to value merit above all else, but in the end, people are judged by where they came from. Despite this, those men fought their way up from nothing. Reijou paused in plucking the seeds from a flower and looked up at Arnold. The men with the worst cases of the paralysis were all newly assigned. They've spent weeks training to ensure this mission was a success. That older knight, the one who bowed to you, sustained an injury protecting the rookies. He cares deeply about his men. You seem to care about them too, Reijou commented. I handpicked them for my retinue. Arnold clambered to his feet only to fall into a bow. And you kept them safe. You have my deepest gratitude. Reijou found herself at a loss for words. Was this Arnold putting on a mask to hide the monster within? Or was this the real him? She remembered the way he'd looked when he held his blade to the bandit's throat, like a child poised to break a toy he had grown bored of. Don't mention it, Reijou said, uncomfortable. I knew how to do it, so I did. Arnold laughed softly. Be that as it may, I'd still count a noblewoman who can brew remedies from wildflowers by the side of the road a rare find. Earlier, when you grabbed my wrist, Reijou steered the subject away from her incongruous knowledge. You broke your promise. You said you wouldn't touch me. That was reflex, Arnold protested. I thought you were going to hurt yourself. Such a simple conversation, so casual. It had Reijou feeling positively peculiar. Why are your knights so wary around me? She asked. Wary? Oh, they were all at the palace when you broke your first engagement. They are most likely concerned I'm bringing home a villainous jilt who will lead to my ruin. Something silly like that, I see. Apparently being dumped by a prince called into question one's herbalist abilities. I'm glad you mentioned it, Arnold went on, because there may be people in Galkeen who will oppose our union. I will do everything in my power to protect you, but you must bring any insults or threats to me right away. Are there likely to be many? In theory, the crown prince may choose his own wife, but the done thing is, of course, to marry a princess. I assume a duke's daughter would have at least some ties to the royal family. He assumed correctly. She was in the family tree, if a rather distant branch. My father has ordered me to choose a bride from a different kingdom rather than a woman of my own land because one never knows when a hostage will come in handy. Reijou finished for him. Galkeen was an expansionist empire. Currently peace reigned, but peace was precarious. If Galkeen demanded any of the countries to hand over a princess bride, then none were in a position to refuse. With his daughter in the hands of a foreign power, no king would dare oppose a war that power cared to wage. I sent a message to my father telling him I happened upon a close relation of Hermides' king, a duke's daughter who had been recently tossed aside by her fiancé, Arnold said. I also may have implied I was the reason for your falling out, yours and the prince's. Why, when I saw a woman so powerful and connected and beloved, I couldn't help but plunder you, plunder me. That's certainly one way to describe it. Dietrich had kicked up an almighty fuss despite being the one who broke the engagement. My father approves of you because he sees you as a bargaining chip. There will be others who aren't prepared to accept you so willingly. Is that so? Reijou said steadily. Never fear, Arnold responded. They'll eat their words, every one of them. They will receive you as their crown princess if they value no, being a hostage is perfect. Arnold stared at her. As a hostage, I'll have no official duties, will I? We can pretend I'm here only under great duress, and there will be no need for my comment on governmental or diplomatic affairs. Arnold hesitated. I suppose not. Excellent. Then I can live my dream of being utterly useless. Reijou trembled with delight. The thought of acting as an ambassador had really been weighing on her mind. Being a princess was non-stop work. Having been groomed for the position from an early age, Reijou knew members of the royal family barely even had time to sleep. But prisoners didn't have places in government. This is such a weight off my mind, Reijou admitted. Thank you so much for keeping your promise, Your Highness. Of course, but don't worry, I won't shirk my duties as wedding planner. Nearly ready to collapse with relief, Reijou returned to her herbs. After the bandit incident, Reijou felt the knights begin to ease a bit in her presence. Despite their initial reluctance to accept her help, they continued to report the injured men's progress and bring any concerns directly to her. In return, they took over gathering herbs from the surrounding countryside on their rest stops. She hadn't done it for gratitude, but she was nonetheless touched. Gathering medicinal herbs had been second nature ever since her life as an apothecary, and it was foolish to ever turn down loyalty. Several days after the altercation with the bandits, the coach train finally arrived in the imperial capital of Galkeen. Oh my, Reijou murmured as they passed through the gates. White stone buildings stood in straight rows, lining clean, orderly streets. The first stories all appeared to be shops, while the second-floor windows were festooned with flowers. Everywhere she looked were smiling faces, citizens turned out to witness their prince's return over the smooth brick roads. Overlooking it all was the towering magnificence of the imperial palace. The capital is the seat of power in Galkeen, Arnold explained. Several key trade routes converge here. Reijou nodded, suddenly anxious to be out of the coach. More and more people were gathering to watch their progress, some carrying shopping bags in both arms or holding hands with children. Many of them waved, as if greeting someone dear to them. Happy citizens and clean, orderly streets meant wealth. Galkeen was well off. Reijou couldn't help but grin at an adorable little girl watching them roll by with sparkling eyes. When she saw Reijou's smile, she blushed and leapt up in the air, laughing with delight. The coach made its way through the city before passing through the castle gates. Lines of disciplined knights flanked the road, ready to greet the crown prince and his fiancée. Arnold stepped out of the coach, holding out his hand to Reijou. She took it reflexively as she alighted. A prince would be expected to help any lady out of carriage, never mind his own consort, yet for some reason the knights looked a bit disturbed. Reijou shot them back a look of innocent confusion. Our long journey is at last at its end, Your Highness, Lady Reijou. Oliver emerged from the ranks of the knights, bowing. He shot Arnold a curious glance. How novel to see you taking the hand of your fiancé. Ah. Reijou realized that she herself had willingly broken the condition that she had imposed. Arnold had offered his hand, but she was the one who accepted. Arnold gave a little laugh of triumph. Reijou felt a rush of frustration at being tricked. Oliver stared at them before leaning in to whisper in Arnold's ear. Arnold let out a breath of annoyance. Is something the matter? Reijou asked. I sent orders ahead to have a detached wing of the palace prepared for us, but it seems the preparations are behind schedule. I'm sorry, but you'll need to stay in a guest room in the main palace for a few days. "Oh, I don't mind if the wing isn't ready," Reijou said. "We can head over there now, it hasn't been used in quite a while. It'll be covered in dust." I said that I didn't mind if it was a mess, remember? "But there's no need for you to put yourself out. By all means, stay in the main palace for as long as you need." Reijou had spent a life as a maid, dust didn't scare her. "Besides, I'm a hostage after all. You could at least attempt to sound distressed," Arnold said with the slightest trace of petulance. Reijou, who had a huge grin spreading over her face and her chest puffed out with pride, didn't respond. The detached wing turned out to be just a separate palace in the distant corner of the grounds, a scant 4 stories tall and, as advertised, absolutely swimming in dust. Not so bad, though. Reijou had pictured decay and clutter, but it was mostly just bare. Bare and musty, but not rotten or falling apart. "You can do whatever you want with this place. I'll be occupied over the next few days, but feel free to use the guest apartments in the main palace if you get tired of choking to death," Arnold said before he left. According to Oliver, work had piled up while the prince was away, and it wasn't just a few things that could be dispensed with over a few days working around the clock. "Emperor Arnold Hein, he's just a crown prince right now, but I still wish I knew what's going on in his head. For now, I'll just focus on what I can do. Like make this place livable." She changed into her plainest dress and rolled up her sleeves. The knights who'd remained to serve as her guard kept watch over her as she went from window to window, throwing them all open. In a stroke of luck, the weather was good, and the detached wing was well placed to soak up the sun. The lack of any creature comforts made it look ascetic and drab, but once it was furnished, Reijou had no doubt it would be lovely. Leaving the top floors to air out, Reijou found the stairs to the basement. She pushed the heavy wooden doors open, and mice skittered over her feet. The knights yelped as Reijou descended into the darkness. "Lady Reijou, why are you going down here? Cleaning supplies are usually kept in the basement." "See," the knights followed her gaze to a duster, broom, dustpan, and pile of fresh cloths. She filled a bucket with water and went to work, rolling up a handkerchief to cover her mouth as she swept dust down from high on the walls. Then she swept up all the dust on the floor. It's always satisfying to tackle a place this filthy. She corralled the dust bunnies until they were piled up like snow in the center of the hall, and then she swept them out the open door. Once the floors were free of debris, she attacked them with the cloth. "Lady Reijou, is there anything we can do to help?" Reijou was grateful for the knight's offer, but she shook her head. "Your job is to guard me, not do my housekeeping. This is quite the place to clean on your own, detached though it may be," the knight said hesitantly. "It's not too late to move into the guest chambers instead. That's all right. I like the place already." Reijou remained steadfast in her refusal for one reason: readying guest chambers was an awful chore. The palace maids would be expected to work overnight to prepare them, even if the guests were only staying a single night. No speck of dust or strand of hair could remain. Certainly no wrinkled sheets. Reijou knew how exhausting and rigorous a maid's job was, how nerve-wracking. She refused to put the poor dears through such an ordeal for just a few days' stay. From the sound of things, the palace wasn't equipped with many housemaids. No doubt they already had their hands full. Besides, take a look. She held out her arms wide, gesturing to her sparkling clean floor. The knights stared at the bright room in admiration. "Cleaning a place with your own hands makes living there that much more satisfying, you see." The knights smiled their awkward but good-natured agreement. Reijou worked tirelessly, and before long, the chambers where she would spend the night were ready. The knights offered to carry in the bed, which she allowed. While they brought in furniture, Reijou started cleaning another room. She had run out of clean water, so she quietly slipped out to the well without informing the knights. It wasn't quite fair to them, but these were the palace grounds. Surely she didn't need to be chaperoned everywhere. Besides, they're guards in name only. "They're clearly just here to report my movements to Arnold Hein," Reijou reflected as she walked through a courtyard full of flowers, bucket in hand. Iridescent butterflies cavorted playfully around her feet. "He doesn't seem in a hurry to introduce me to the king. Although if I'm just a hostage, that doesn't surprise me." She hoped she got to meet the current emperor at least once. The future Arnold's violent conquest only began after he killed the man and made himself emperor, after all. I wonder what happened to Arnold Hine after I died in my past life. Did he reign supreme after winning his war? Or did some country manage to put a stop to his conquest? Whatever the case, I absolutely cannot allow him to start a conflict this time. Being the empress of a wartime nation sounds like so much work. The very thought is unacceptable. Perhaps they could divorce, but Reijou had a feeling that if Arnold decided to discard her in the middle of a war, she would fail in her mission to make it past the age of 20. Better to avoid the situation altogether. Wait. When she thought about it, the cause of every single one of Reijou's deaths was Arnold and his war. I died fighting. I died of an infectious disease I caught while treating battlefield injuries. I died when Galkin's army invaded. Looking at her 6 lives, all of them had ended in more or less the same way. Reijou found herself crouched on the ground, cradling her head in her hands. Maybe we should get a divorce right now. But it wasn't in Reijou's nature to take back her decisions once she'd made them. If I leave, I'll probably just die in some war-related disaster again. If I can't live apart from him, I should take this opportunity to learn everything that I can. Reijou didn't know the cause of her repeating lives, but there was no guarantee that the loops were infinite. She had to operate under the possibility that this life could be her last. This required some thought, but standing around seething with anxiety wouldn't help. Right now I'll focus on cleaning. Once the bath is here, I'll scrub off all the dust and travel exhaustion. And then I can finally relax. Brimming with new determination, she stood up and headed for the well. She was forestalled by the sound of jeering giggles. "Awa, look at the new girl trying so hard," said one voice. "All the enthusiasm in the world won't make a difference," said another. "We're going to be the crown princess's maids, not you," the first added. "Hey, are you even listening?" "Stop wasting your time." Reijou heard a weak scream, followed by a thump like a body hitting the ground. She broke into a run, finding a blonde girl sprawled in the dirt, surrounded by 4 other women. "Are you all right?" Reijou hurried over to help the girl up. Her maid's uniform, a loose navy blue dress with a white apron, was smeared with mud. The others were dressed identically. "Who are you?" one of the girls snapped at Reijou. She had a mop of blazing red hair. Another newbie, an understandable mistake. Reijou's dress was simple, free of ornamentation, and her hair was bound back in a ponytail to keep it out of the way. She was dust-streaked, sweaty, and carrying a bucket in her arms. "Telling them who I am will be more trouble than it's worth." Her silence only angered the girls more. "Are you one of the crown princess's maids? They've been snatching up every new girl. Those pretty hands of yours don't look like they've ever held a broom," said one of them. "Unfortunately for you, we've been working here 3 years and will be the ones to serve Prince Arnold as the maids of his palace. Can you stand?" "Oh good, it looks like you're not injured." Reijou helped the girl up out of the dirt. "Hey, don't ignore us," the red-headed maid shouted. "You've got some nerve. If you want to make it here, you'll know your place." "I doubt the 2 of you will last a week." Reijou didn't respond, her attention snagging on something else. The redhead was carrying curtains, probably to bring them to the wash. Reijou stared at them so hard the maid began to shift uncomfortably. "What's your problem? You should wait to wash those," Reijou said. The girl glared daggers at her. "Excuse me. Are you telling me it's too late in the day? You really are an amateur. The light lasts longer in the spring, you know. And it's hot today. There'll be plenty of it's going to rain is all." The maids exchanged glances. "How can you be so sure? Look at the clouds amassing. The butterflies and the bees are flying low. The moisture in the air will make the drying take longer." "What?" Another maid spoke up in a soft voice. "Diana, you were the one who said we should take the initiative to wash the bigger pieces. You said the crown prince would choose us for his household. Stop putting the blame on me." "This isn't my fault." An indignant flush crept over the redhead's face. "There's no way some upstart can tell what time it's going to rain. The weather is going to be fantastic all day. Come on, we're hauling these over to the wash. The three girls meekly followed Diana. Reijou sighed, turning to the blonde girl. Are you hurt? No, I'm fine. The girl's gaze darted around nervously. I'm Elsie. Thank you for helping me. Her face was studiously blank, but from the way she struggled with her words, Reijou could tell she was being genuine. Don't worry about it, Reijou said. Your uniform seems to have fared less well. Oh no, Elsie looked down at herself. Her face remained vacant, but she seemed sad. And I just got it. You can get the dirt out if you wash it straight away. It's going to rain, but this dress should dry quickly. Use lots of soap, but don't scrub it by hand. Scrape the mud off with a brush. Why a brush? Because your fingers will just grind dirt into the threads. A brush is more porous. The young sons of the family Reijou served spent their time tumbling in the dirt, and she had plenty of experience scraping mud out of clothes. She could even salvage dirty socks that had spent days crumpled in the corner. Are you? Elsie trailed off, blinking rapidly a couple of times before finally looking Reijou in the eyes. Are you the crown princess's maid? Unsure how to answer, Reijou couldn't meet her eyes. After parting ways with Elsie, Reijou returned to the detached wing with her fresh water. She put clean sheets on the bed the knights had installed, satisfied that she had a comfortable place to sleep. This room also had the highest-up balcony in the whole detached palace. Taking a break, she wandered out onto the balcony and looked off over the capital, the golden afternoon tinged with the onset of twilight. The day was fresh with a recent rain, the air clear enough to see for miles. The spring breeze felt good against her skin, sweaty from cleaning. Reijou leaned against the railing, leaning her head back and closing her eyes. She felt like collapsing into bed immediately, but she desperately needed a wash. Still, she didn't want to pull herself away from the view and the breeze just yet. When she resumed gazing out absent-mindedly, something her mother once said drifted back to her. Reijou, there is no need for you to think for yourself. She frowned, the memories coming thick and fast now. You mustn't forget that the duty of our family is to live our lives fully devoted to the kings of the land. You're smart, but all the thinking in the world won't do a woman any good. You need only concern yourself with how best to serve the crown prince. Studies. Focus on social etiquette, that's what you need for navigating high society. The crown prince's bride must be flawless. Your smile is lacking. You must always strive to appear amiable. Reijou breathed out a long sigh. When I was 15, their lectures were the only thing I thought about. Her parents preached constantly. A woman's true happiness is to marry a suitable man and give birth to his heirs. But mother, objection was not permitted. Any argument was immediately dispensed with. As a woman, Reijou could not inherit her father's title. Her only value was in her marriage. Despite knowing now that the opinions of others were as worthless as empty titles, the words still echoed in her memories. Reijou's fingertips twitched and she opened her eyes. Unmoving, she said, shouldn't you be seeing to your duties? More hidden depths, I see, came a voice tinged with pleasure. Reijou straightened and turned. There was Arnold, leaning against the door to the balcony. You seem able to sense my approach no matter how far or how hard I try. You're quite naughty, aren't you? You've been making your presence known little by little, emanating threat to see how quickly I catch on, so you noticed that as well. Arnold joined Reijou on the balcony. She tensed, but all he did was cast a curious glance at the view. What were you looking at? The city. Reijou was hardly going to tell him she'd been looking at nothing, merely ruminating on her mother's overbearing advice. The view from the balcony was spectacular, though. What's that over there? You mean the library? The state invested funds to expand it. We have books from all over the world, really. You have a library that big? Reijou's eyes sparkled with delight. She pointed out another building. What about that spire? It's beautiful, the church and clock tower. The bells ring out the hour. Ooh, how wonderful. And it looks like there's a rather big market there too. Yes, the largest market in the city. Carts line up in the early morning. Most of the offerings are made fresh every day. Amazing. And what about that pretty mountain over there? Reijou tried and failed to contain her excitement. She couldn't help but imagine what seeing all these places up close would be like. The grand library, the beautiful church that told the time, and the morning market with fresh, delicious food, she wanted to experience it all. Seeing Arnold's bemused face, she said, "What? I'm just wondering where all this interest is coming from," he said. "You were so reluctant to come, yet here you are, brimming with curiosity for my city." "Well," she trailed off, unsure of how to respond. "What should I say? Should I just tell him the truth?" This wasn't a secret, but talking about her hopes and dreams to the man who had killed her was a little awkward. A strange self-consciousness settled on her, her cheeks heating as she mumbled, "Because I've always wanted to." Arnold looked at her keenly. "Wanted to what?" "I've always wanted to come here." During her life as a merchant, Reijou developed her single dream to visit everywhere in the world. That dream was cut tragically short when only one country remained, Galkine. In each of her consecutive lives, Reijou's priority became staying alive. Every time, without fail, just as she found her footing, the world was plunged into chaos. She never had the chance to see Galkine. This betrothal was her chance. "It's probably why I agreed to marry you," she added after a moment's hesitation. Arnold swept a tepid glance over the city. "There's nothing here worth seeing, that's not true. The places you just told me about sound amazing. Your citizens are clean and happy, your knights are proper and kind." "Oh, and another," Reijou broke off, enumerating Galkine's charms as Arnold turned to look at her. His face was impassively calm, but something seemed to pass by underneath, like a shadow in deep water. "I'm sorry," Reijou said. "Did I say something odd? I'm just amazed you could be so unaware of yourself. What a rude thing to. I've never met anyone like you. No one has ever spoken to me the way you do. I don't know any girls of your class with the knowledge or the physical abilities you possess. Noble women don't concern themselves with such things. Reijou, there is no need for you to think for yourself." She frowned. "Perhaps you're right, but everything I've learned is precious to me. No one can take my skills away. I value them with my life. Some may say that my knowledge is worthless, but it makes no difference to me." She turned from the balcony, fixing him with a piercing gaze. "I'm the one who decides what I value." Reijou had clawed free of her mother and father's indoctrination a long time ago. Man, woman, it didn't matter. She could do anything. Being queen was not the culmination of her life. She wouldn't trade her freedom for anything. Arnold matched her intensity. "You're right." He gently cupped her cheek in one hand, swiping his thumb along the line of her jaw, smearing dust. "Live your life here however you wish. I vow to do my utmost to protect you." His vehemence took her by surprise. Arnold had every right to demand she act the part of a proper consort. This was a political marriage. Reijou was essentially a hostage after all. Yet here he was, co-signing her misbehavior. Moreover, he was all but swearing to defend her from the consequences. "Why, do you know why?" "I'm enamored with you." Arnold fed her the same line. "I know you said you don't care about other people's approval, but I like your asymmetrical talents. I don't find them useless at all." Reijou didn't know how to respond. "I thought I'd already made that clear." He took his hand back, drawing away, stopping just on the threshold. He turned back to a stunned Reijou and said, "Let me know if there's anything you desire. I realize I just broke our agreement, the one about not touching you," and with that he was gone. Shaken, Reijou sank to the floor of the balcony. "I can't predict him at all. Just what is Arnold Hine planning?" The quiet of evening fell over the imperial capital of Galkine. Sunshine streamed through the window as Reijou roused from sleep. She rolled over, basking in the morning light. The wall she expected wasn't there, and the bed seemed larger than usual. Taking advantage of it, she stretched out as far as she could. Was this her chamber at home? Or maybe she was a merchant again, spending a night at the Desert King's palace. Perhaps this was her bed of straw from her life as a maid. Her memories met and interwove as she drifted into wakefulness. When Reijou finally opened her eyes, she grew even more confused. Light blue curtains surrounded the bed, thin enough to allow sunlight to pass through. She pulled them aside to find herself in a bare room devoid of furniture and carpet. Oh, right. She didn't need to report for morning training, tend to her herb garden, prepare breakfast, or see how the bottles she had brewed overnight were coming along. Realizing that, Reijou buried her face in the pillow. "So soft," she murmured. Judging by the position of the sun, it was about 6 o'clock in the morning. She was pretty sure she had gone to bed around midnight last night. "I slept for 6 whole hours." Reijou couldn't believe it. Generally, she was used to getting about 4 hours of sleep. On bad days, at the height of an emergency as a knight or apothecary, she wouldn't even get that much. "I've got nothing but cleaning on the schedule today." "Hostages can sleep in, right?" "At least a little." Excitement suffused her at the thought, but that was interrupted by a knock on the door. "Lady Reijou, are you awake?" "It's Oliver, Prince Arnold's attendant." Reijou sat up with a start. "I'm awake," Oliver continued to speak through the door. "I apologize for bothering you at such an early hour. I'm here with a delivery. Just a moment." Reijou slipped out of the bed, dressed quickly, and tugged the bed's canopy closed. She opened the door to find Oliver standing in the hallway with a polite smile. He apologized again. "This was the only time I could slip away from His Highness's office." "I'm glad to see that you're already dressed." "Not at all." Reijou paused, stepping back to allow him inside. "Oh my. You look exhausted," Oliver grimaced. "Is it that obvious?" "We've been climbing through mountains of paperwork, but never mind me." "His Highness has been working around the clock." Reijou thought back to yesterday, how he had come all the way out to the balcony. He should have used that spare time to sleep. "He's in high demand, isn't he?" "He was even working on the trip over. He finished all the work he brought along with us," Oliver confirmed. "Now he's dealing with everything that piled up during his visit to Hermity." "Oh," Reijou grimaced in sympathy. "He may have killed her in a past life, but she wouldn't wish the bureaucracy of kingship on anyone. It's a shame he had to put his work on hold to attend a silly engagement party." "No matter. That party was how a committed bachelor finally found a bride." His smile was sincere, but Reijou knew better. She spread her arms. "Go on. Shall I spin around so you have a better view?" Oliver blinked. "I beg your pardon, you're looking me over like I'm a horse for sale. If there's anything I can help you with, please let me know." Oliver's brows went up. He let out a little breath of resignation. His Highness was right. You do possess the keen perception of a knight. Of course, I'm purely an amateur myself. I'd say this was a merchant's sixth sense rather than battle intuition. This wasn't the first time Reijou had caught Oliver looking at her. It reminded her of the way her noble customers would examine a product, assessing worth and authenticity, or a merchant weeding out potential merchandise from a wide array of choices. In other words, he was appraising her. Oliver moved into a deep, sweeping bow. "My sincerest apologies, my lady. I have been unaccountably rude to my lord's consort. My behavior was unacceptable." Reijou shook her head. "Please don't, it's fine. It wasn't unreasonable for the prince's closest attendant to be wary of strangers. But it did make her curious." "How long have you worked for Arnold?" "Have you always been a valet?" "I trained as a squire, actually," Oliver replied. "But I was injured and dismissed from the order. His Highness took me into his household soon after. I have served him for nearly a decade." "Then maybe you can answer this," Reijou said. "Why is Prince Arnold so very intent on making me his wife?" Oliver hesitated, as if weighing the pros and cons of speaking. "To be quite honest, I was as surprised as you were. He's always insisted he had no interest in marriage. But the sight of you in Hermity has changed his mind. Apparently, so not even his attendant understood his motives." Reijou remained at a complete loss. "If I may, however," Oliver mistook Reijou's confusion for anxiety and added, "I have served Prince Arnold for a long time, and never before have I seen him so happy. When he is with you, he laughs. His smiles are sincere." Reijou was taken aback. She'd figured all of Arnold's laughter and teasing was at her expense. "His own private jokes." "Are you unhappy with him?" Oliver ventured. "With his looks, His Highness is exceedingly popular with the ladies of the court, you know. I'm sure he has many admirers." She paused. "Would you really call the way he acts around me happy?" To me it seems more like a cat with a mouse. Oliver laughed. He didn't deny it. I am pleased you understand His Highness so well. Oh, I nearly forgot. Here he held out a sheaf of 3 documents. This is the guest list for your wedding. His Highness bids you look over it. Thank you, Reijou said, pleasantly surprised. She hadn't even needed to ask. She gave it a quick glance, quickly identifying the most prominent and powerful names. King Zahad, Prince Kyle, Princess Harriet. And from the Kingdom of Damana, we have Lord Jonal attending as the representative of the king. No surprise there. More than a wedding guest register, this was a list of key people from the countries Arnold would go on to antagonize. Even before the murder of the king and the start of the war, there must have been a trigger, a sea change in the affairs of state. Everyone on this list was most likely involved. King Zahad. I hope we can be friends again like in my first life. Prince Kyle is rather frail. I hope he isn't working himself too hard. He has a strong sense of responsibility. He'll attend the wedding even though it'll be a long trip. The sight of these names filled Reijou with a longing for those lives, for the people she'd once known. And sometime in the very near future, they would all be Galkeen's enemies. If I take matters into my own hands, perhaps I can salvage some of these relationships before they sour. Even if we aren't allies, we don't have to be enemies. Anything to stave off the outbreak of war. Oliver had no idea what was going through Reijou's head. Brightly, he continued their conversation. The ceremony will be held in 3 months' time. All preparations must be complete by then. And now we need to discuss tonight's party. Tonight's what? Oliver stiffened. Did His Highness not tell you? No, he most certainly did not. There's to be a party. Ugh, not again. Oliver dug his knuckles into his forehead. Reijou put 2 and 2 together. She hesitated, then said, so there is one then. As you must know, His Highness is trying to stamp it down without telling me. I'm sorry, Oliver replied. He should have mentioned it to you. You don't need to attend, but he will. At least I hope he will. I think I managed to convince him. She sympathized with Oliver. Under normal circumstances, it would be unheard of for the crown prince and his fiancée to fail to appear at a banquet. Don't worry, Oliver. I'll go. Oliver let out a sigh of relief. Really? Thank you so much, my lady. I'll put finding you a maid at the top of my to-do list. No need, Reijou smiled. I can prepare for the party on my own. This maid selection process made Reijou uneasy. After witnessing that exchange between the servants in the garden, she imagined quarrels breaking out all through the palace. And she doubted the disputes would go away even after they decided. Oliver frowned. But won't dressing be difficult without a lady's maid? She shook her head. I can do my hair and put on a gown by myself. I brought dresses and cosmetics from home. Don't worry, Reijou ignored Oliver's stunned look, already reevaluating her cleaning plans. The first thing Reijou said to Arnold that night was, Your Highness, I have a request. Her gown rustled as she leaned in close. I would like some herb seed and a corner of the gardens. I made a list. I hope we can discuss this in more detail later. Arnold was silent a moment. Reijou, what? Didn't you tell me to let you know if there was anything I wanted? She looked at him quizzically, and Arnold sighed. She'd heard that he'd finished his mountain of work and even managed to sleep for a while. He was dressed in his usual military black, trimmed with a red mantle and black gloves. Arnold shook his head. That's not what I mean. I'm guessing that Oliver didn't tell you the reason for this party. It's merely for appearance's sake. I need to look like I'm searching for a bride within our borders as well. There's no reason for you to attend. It made sense. The crown prince, the greatest catch in the kingdom, marrying a foreigner without even the slightest nod to propriety would invite unwanted discontent from the nobility. However, we're betrothed, Arnold said. This whole evening is merely a formality. And with news that you're my hostage going around, you'll be an object of curiosity. I don't want to put you through that. Well, I already went to the trouble of getting ready. Reijou plucked at her soft blue dress, draped in fluttering layers around her like a flower bud. She'd braided her hair, decorating it with accessories. Her makeup was light, her shoes polished to a mirror shine. Her only jewelry was a pair of pearl earrings. Reijou, Your Highness, the court may consider my status as a captive princess shameful in the extreme, but I don't. She'd chosen this course after all. Arnold was again watching her with a mixture of wonder and confusion. So don't worry, she said, extending her hand. Feel free to show off your fiancé. Arnold relented, his dashing smile creeping out once again. Very well. I should take advantage of this opportunity to touch my betrothed. We're wearing gloves. Arnold took Reijou's hand. A throng of guests was gathered in the ballroom as a group of musicians performed on a platform. Women in gowns stood clustered, while gentlemen in military attire grouped together. A mere glance was enough to tell their clothes were of the highest quality. They mingled happily, making small talk with glasses in hand. Reijou let her hand rest on Arnold's arm as she paused at the threshold to take it all in. This is a bigger event than I was expecting, is it? I'd say it's a rather small gathering, actually. Maybe for a military powerhouse, Reijou muttered. Yet another reminder of Galkeen's wealth took her off guard. Arnold just looked bored. The size doesn't matter, he said. In the end, they're only here for gossip. Look, here they come. In the blink of an eye, they were surrounded by guests. Prince Arnold, thank you for gracing us with an invitation, said one man. Such a pleasure, the pleasure is mine, Lord Abel, Arnold drawled. Your Highness. We were so glad to hear of your safe return, another guest chirped. Please, our daughter is simply dying to be regaled with tales of your trip. I can't imagine I'd have anything particularly exciting to share with her, Arnold said curtly. After the last few days, Reijou found this look of glazed apathy disturbing. His good looks only compounded it, he was so handsome that every expression was stark. He looks more like Emperor Arnold Hein now, but still not the same. Arnold appeared to notice her watching him. When he looked at her, his sourness disappeared, replaced by a genuine smile. All around him, women found themselves flushing. Arnold paid no heed to their fervent gazes, instead leaning in to give Reijou a brief moment of consideration. Then he leaned in close enough to kiss her. A dull trip, he said again, pulling away. But fortuitous. Without it, I would have never met the woman destined to be my wife. A shocked murmur rolled through the crowd. Reijou, who hadn't recovered from seeing Arnold's beautiful face at close range, barely noticed the looks of utter loathing the assembled women were throwing her. His Highness is smiling. At his hostage bride, he called her his wife. He's never even looked at us, they were whispers but they carried. A portly man stepped forward with his daughter in tow. Your Highness, do you mean to say that this lovely young woman is your fiancée? Every eye in the ballroom was on Reijou, alight with curiosity, envy, or schemes. None of them could hide their contempt. But Reijou didn't falter. This is nothing compared to being publicly dumped in a banquet hall. And I've done that 7 times. She offered a polite smile and an astoundingly correct curtsy. Left leg at a diagonal behind the right, back straight, head bowed. How do you do? My name is Reijou Irmgard Weitzner. Even the most hostile guests could find nothing impolite in her greeting, no sign of rough manners from the rustic daughter of a backwater nation. Reijou had years of training in expectation of ascending to the throne. Occasionally, habits from her other lives slipped through, but Arnold appeared to be the only one who noticed. Now he was looking at her with satisfaction. Lady Reijou has only just arrived, and her acquaintances are few and far between. I hope I can count on you all to hold me accountable should I prove an incompetent husband, but of course, Your Highness, come Reijou. Arnold guided her out of the ring of spectators. The stares continued to follow them as they walked away. Reijou dropped her voice to a whisper. You sure know how to invite the ire of women. Whatever do you mean, the way you harped on about me? Everything you said was tailor-made to stoke their jealousy. You've gained me enemies, so thanks for that, Arnold snorted. Everything I said was to protect you from enemies. They need to know you aren't just some trophy they can eliminate without recourse. We need to show them this to forestall any potential moves against you in the future. Show them what exactly? That I'll protect you no matter what. He said it with such nonchalance that it brought her up short. Protect me. Arnold Hine, protect me. Such an ironic position to take. She couldn't tell him that, of course. Her response came out somewhat strangled. I doubt there'll be anything to worry about. In fact, the biggest threat facing me is you. Oh. And why do you say that? For many reasons, the most obvious being that I'm no match for you with a blade, as much as it pained her to admit it. Arnold looked pleased. Perhaps we should duel, yes, please. And if it wouldn't be an intrusion, I would like to train with you. If she studied him, she could learn his strategies and his attack patterns. She'd never be a match in speed or raw power, but any insight would be invaluable. Sure, Arnold shrugged. I don't mind, truly. Her eyes glittered with anticipation. He chuckled. Your answers never disappoint me. What's that supposed to mean? Oh, it looks like they're playing a new song. A soft melody drifted across the hall. The crowd divided, heading toward the center of the floor or against the wall. The next dance was starting, and everyone was waiting to see what the crown prince and his new fiancée would do. We don't have to dance if you don't want to, Arnold said. Oh, as it happens, I like dancing. Plus, she couldn't resist a blatant challenge. She offered him her hand. Very well then. Arnold only hesitated for a moment before taking it and steering her gently to an empty spot on the floor. He didn't seem like the dancing type, but his movements were slick and effortless. Facing one another, they joined hands. Arnold wrapped his other arm around her waist. Oh, his hand felt huge against her back. She realized she was breathing a little faster. They'd never been this close before. No, that isn't quite true. This is the second time. Reijou's final memories from her last life flashed vividly through her mind. This was indeed the second time they had been this close. The first had ended with a sword through her chest. Emperor Arnold Hine had single-handedly decimated the knights in the castle. Reijou stood in the midst of the carnage, breath ragged as she gripped the hilt of her sword, slick with her own blood. She was the last line of defense. The chamber behind her housed the royal family. If they could reach the hidden passageways, the young prince and his party could find shelter with their allies across the border. Reijou and the other knights were prepared to sacrifice their lives to allow the royal family to survive. Their escape meant victory. Bells tolled out, urging flight. All is lost. Run! Reijou managed to graze Arnold's cheek with her blade before she looked down to find his jet-black sword blooming out of her chest. She remembered how it burned, as if the blade was made of fire. It was heat, not pain, but her breathing grew labored, and when Emperor Arnold Hine withdrew his sword, Reijou crumpled. He knelt by her side and whispered something. The words were seared into her memory. Reijou squeezed Arnold's hand as they danced. I'll be the bully this time. Reijou shifted her weight back, slipping out of the hold on her waist. She broke Arnold's lead and spun, drifting on the harmony of the dance. She took him by surprise, his eyes went wide. I wonder what you'll do when you're no longer on top, Your Highness. Her smile was a declaration of war. Watching him attempt to follow her lead would be delightful. She pulled his hand toward her, attempting to move them into a spin. But Arnold held fast. He planted his hand on her waist and turned them in a different direction, using her inertia against her. Hey! As a result, Reijou twirled by herself on the spot. She didn't miss a step. She turned elegantly, the hem of her dress whispering across the ballroom floor. She heard appreciative murmurs from the wallflowers lined up watching. Despite that, Reijou took it as a defeat. Round 1 to Arnold. So you can think on your feet. How about this? Arnold remained unruffled, evading her next scheme like it was nothing. He grinned down at her, his eyes shining with a dare. He thinks I can't beat him. His ease vexed her, but it was his smugness that made her angry. She let out a hard breath, attempting a maneuver to lure him in while turning. He leaned back, not falling for it at all. He's just too good at changing his center of gravity. She kept her astonishment under wraps, but she felt it. Despite how close we're dancing, I can't throw off his timing at all. He's sidestepped all my attempts, and he takes back the lead the second I let down my guard. It made her increasingly angry. She twirled and stepped as the dance dictated, all the while feeling out for moments of weakness. Arnold played along with her game, completely unruffled. Every single time. I'm doing my utmost to trip him up, but he doesn't even seem annoyed. At this point, she'd just settle for any reaction at all. Their unusual dance style had gathered a crowd. Reijou paid them no mind, focused only on her goal. Then something occurred to her, and her breath caught in her throat. Wait a minute, he has left an opening. It's the same one from before. She thought back to their fight to the death, to that moment when she had managed to draw blood. That may indeed have been his only weakness. If I strike the same way, huh? Before she could try, Arnold appeared to lose patience, wrapping his arm around her waist. He bent her back into a dip, so deep it felt like he'd pulled a carpet from under her feet. She yelped, grabbing at him reflexively, clinging tight. His big hands gripped her securely enough to mitigate the sensation of falling. Relief flooded through her, and she felt a laugh rumble against her ear. The music came to an end with one last ringing note. She blinked. The dance is over. A hush fell over the ballroom. Then cheers broke out, followed by a round of applause. That was incredible, the watching nobles crowded in. You two moved in such perfect harmony, I was on the edge of my seat. I felt like I was watching a sword duel. Is this a dance from Hermity? I've never seen such steps before. Well, Reijou floundered. She glanced up at Arnold, who appeared to be enjoying her struggle. She'd get no help from him. Reijou dealt with the barrage of questions as best she could, letting the crowd sweep them into the dining room, which was set up for a buffet-style meal. She made sure to greet every guest, riveting their faces into her memory. She must have been acting peculiar because Arnold eventually said, "Reijou, I think the wine is getting to you. Shall we get some fresh air?" Reijou hadn't touched a single drop. In fact, she'd been caught up in so many conversations that she hadn't even had the chance to eat, but she had experience working on an empty stomach. She accepted Arnold's encouragement as the escape it was. Just when I least expect it, he'll act the gentleman. Maybe he'd remembered her demand for a carefree life of doing nothing. Reijou cast a charming look across the crowd. "Thank you for your consideration, Your Highness." "Forgive me," she gave a polite bow before quietly slipping away. She didn't head straight to the balcony, but rather slowly walked around the hall. There was only so much she could find out glued to Arnold's side all night. "I need information." Galkeen's political landscape was a mystery to me through all my past lives. I only know the rumors that made it abroad. Although she knew of Arnold's eventual patricide, she had no concept of the circumstances leading up to it. She needed a better picture of the factions and power balance inside the court. The lives these people led. I know better than to believe wartime gossip. This Arnold Hine is a lot different from what I'd heard he was like at 19. He's not as diabolical as the rumors led me to believe. He likes to push, but he isn't unkind. The thought drifted across her mind, leaving her conflicted. Well, he's not unkind now. But I still don't like not knowing his motives. And he's a bit of a jerk, to be honest. She tried to settle her mind and just observe. Gathering intelligence was necessary to lead a long, carefree life lazing around the palace. If I recall correctly, that's Lord Hanayome. He seems to be on good terms with Count Gale. Duke Hudeman and Duke Tainitz are having a friendly enough conversation, yet they don't seem close. Reijou ticked off the names of people she'd met, committing them to memory. A wave of sweet perfume wafted over her. A pretty girl with soft blonde hair had appeared at her side. "How do you do, Lady Reijou? I'm Cornelia Thea Tuna." Duke Tuna's family was the 31st house she'd met tonight. Reijou smiled graciously. "Reijou Irmgard Weitzna." "A pleasure to meet you. The pleasure is all mine." Cornelia smiled sweetly. Her eyes were big and bright, her lips full. She held a glass in each hand and offered one to Reijou. "Wine. I see you're empty-handed." A gaggle of other ladies nearby began giggling among themselves. How dare she act so haughty when she's a captive? It's time for her to learn just what she is. A pawn to be played and discarded. She should enjoy her time on Prince Arnold's arm while she can. She is from a minor nation, after all. As Reijou took note of their whispers, Cornelia gazed at her with doe eyes. Does my offering offend you in some way? If I remember correctly, House Tuna holds a vast territory in southern Galkeen. Reijou held out a hand to accept the glass. How could it? Thank you, Lady Cornelia. Before Reijou could touch the glass, Cornelia gave a dramatic shout. Oh dear. My hand slipped. She dropped it, quite obviously on purpose. Without thinking, Reijou grabbed her skirts and leaned back, plucking the glass out of the air with the other hand. Cornelia let out a cry of surprise as Reijou caught the wine before any could spill. She swirled the glass and brought it to her nose to breathe in the bouquet. That's mashed capsicum. Where did she even get that? What a waste of perfectly good wine. And why bother spicing it enough to singe the tongue if she just planned to ruin my dress? Pick a plan, my dear. Hiding her exasperation, Reijou smiled brightly. I've never had a wine quite like this. What an unusual scent. Cornelia bit her lip in frustration. Reijou beamed at her. You've got such a pretty face, Lady Tuna. Why don't you smile? Reijou leaned in close to Cornelia. This vintage isn't available where I'm from. I'm ever so anxious to learn more. Should I perhaps invite Prince Arnold over to enjoy a glass? Which tray did you get this from? What? Oh, Reijou had a policy of never backing down from a fight, but it seemed Cornelia didn't share it. Sorry, but I don't remember. Such a large haul, you see. A shame. I'll just give His Highness this one then. I'll be sure to let him know who it's from. Wait, Cornelia rapidly shook her head. I got that glass for you, so I think you should. You know what? Never mind. Maybe I should just take that. Oh no. Reijou ignored the ashen-faced Cornelia, raising the glass and swallowing down a gulp. I can't believe such a spicy flavor, just as I imagined. Reijou smiled again to the assembled group's astonishment. What a warm welcome. I do hope the two of us can spend more time together. Perhaps a tea party, the two of us, Cornelia stammered. Yes. I want to know all about House Tuna. Cornelia looked flabbergasted, but she recovered herself and nodded. That should do. One of Reijou's eventual plans required a plot of land in a temperate climate. House Tuna's would likely be perfect, but she needed to confirm a few things with Cornelia. Never back down from a fight. Even further, she recalled the words of her mentor from her days as a merchant. Don't bother with fights you can't win. The other ladies fled, fearful of this strange girl who gulped down painfully spicy wine like it was nothing. Reijou retreated to the empty balcony to enjoy the music, grimacing with every stinging mouthful of wine. She drank it in decreasing sips until Arnold joined her. What are you making that face for? Reijou swirled the glass. Don't worry, it's not you. It's just this wine is so spicy. The wine is, It's seasoned with capsicum. I barely managed to get that first mouthful down without gagging. Arnold swiped the glass from her hand. Don't tell me this was a poisoning attempt. Reijou clicked her tongue in annoyance at her own lack of vigilance. No one else would be able to grab something from her so easily. Arnold glared at the wines. You don't need to drink this. I'll get rid of it. Hey, give that back. They ruined a perfectly good glass of wine because of me. I'm not going to waste it. She grabbed it back and took another sip, shuddering at the taste. Arnold glowered. Tell me who did this. I'll have them executed. Don't be ridiculous. You don't kill people like her, you use them. Just the tiniest bit of wine to go, but it was getting harder to make herself drink it. She gave the glass a reproachful look, then glanced back at Arnold. Oh, and I owe you an apology. Do you? I used your name to defend myself. The girls had only backed off when she threatened to tattle to Arnold. Reijou found that sort of thing inelegant in the extreme, and she was embarrassed. Arnold sighed at Reijou's apologetic bow. There's nothing wrong with a wife invoking her husband's name. Reijou hesitated. We're not married yet, that's a formality. It's as good as done if you ask me. I see. He took her distraction as an opportunity to swipe her glass back. Instead of dumping it out, Arnold gulped the rest of it down. Damn, that packs a punch, he grumbled. I told you that, Reijou snapped. Are you all right? Let me get you some water. I'm fine. But now you've fulfilled your obligation to the wine, haven't you? Reijou didn't know what to say. He'd helped her not by taking charge but by following her lead. Without cutting her down and telling her she was being foolish. Without rolling his eyes and dismissing her desires as trifles. Thank you, Reijou said stiffly, which just made him laugh. What were you thinking about when we were dancing? He asked. What do you mean? You were thinking about someone else, weren't you? Who? Reijou didn't know a delicate way to say I was thinking about a future version of you I met in another life. His tone was oddly light, teasing even. But the gleam in his hunter's eyes said she wouldn't get away so easily. Obviously, Reijou couldn't give him an honest answer. I wasn't thinking about anyone else. I was worried about you. Why? This was the closest she could come to the truth. Were you injured here? She patted her own left shoulder with her forefinger. Arnold went silent. His left shoulder was slightly slower to react than his right. If his right was at 100, then his left was at maybe 98. It was hardly noticeable, but Reijou had picked up on it. He was right-handed, and she wouldn't have noticed it if they'd been dancing normally. That, and if it hadn't been for memories from her past life. Reijou had only managed to inflict a single injury on him. An instant, a moment's hesitation where she saw her chance and slashed left. Of course, he'd shrugged off the injury and effortlessly run her through. Hech, Arnold finally broke his silence with grim laughter. His eyes sent shivers down her spine, cold and bewitching. In lieu of an answer, he reached for his collar, unfastening the clasp with a snap and drawing his jacket open with a rough tug. Oh my! Reijou drew in a breath. A great scar was engraved into the nape of his neck, just low enough to be concealed by clothing. It looked several years old. It's an old wound. It continues to the top of my shoulder and pulls the skin taut. How awful. Reijou couldn't help but reach out to gingerly touch the nape of his neck. Arnold accepted her touch without a word. She'd half expected to be slapped aside. Her fingers slowly traced the shape of it. She could feel the rough skin through her gloves. He must have gotten this over a decade ago. Someone stabbed him, and not just once or twice. They must have done it over and over to make this scar pattern. Her medical training had her shuddering at the image of a 9-year-old Arnold ashen and trembling with blood loss. The fact that he'd survived and retained the use of his arm was incredible. And then to go on to wield a sword so skillfully, his suffering must have been immense. Only a few people know about this injury. You're the first to notice on your own. How did it happen? That grim smile returned as he looked down at Reijou. With the moon hanging behind him, he was as opaque as ever, but Reijou understood the sentiment. I shouldn't pry. Reijou pulled her hand away, and that ominous smile that sent chills down her spine disappeared. Arnold put his jacket back in order, reclasping it at the neck. Someone tried to kill Arnold Hine about 10 years ago. But who and why? Reijou cast her eyes down as she ruminated. The most obvious beneficiaries of a dead crown prince would be potential heirs and those loyal to them. I believe Arnold has a younger brother, but I haven't met him yet. Odd. Reijou might be a hostage, but shouldn't she meet her future relatives? Perhaps it was Arnold's doing, and not the will of the imperial family themselves. He didn't seem to want to involve her in anything unless it was absolutely necessary. He hadn't told her about this ball, after all. Reijou looked up at him. Your Highness, may I select my maid sometime over the next few days? Very well. I'll tell Oliver to make that a priority. I can do the selection myself. We needn't trouble him. Arnold arched an amused brow. Gone was that unsettling smile, replaced with his easy manner. What are you planning this time? Oh, nothing important, Reijou said. She picked up her empty glass. I'm merely concerned about the servants' working conditions. To protect her life and well-being, she needed to keep from dying at 20 years old again. And to do that, she had to prevent Arnold Hine's war. Her best bet would be to appeal to the important people she'd known in her past lives. People with influence. Plus, there was a mountain of things she needed to do in preparation for the marriage ceremony. I need to sow a plot of land, grow herbs, do lots of shopping, get cheap alcohol, and then Reijou began a to-do list that had nothing to do with war in the least. As the ball wound to a close, a lone boy stood in the gloomy courtyard of the imperial palace. He had soft black hair and round blue eyes. No older than 16, he had an androgynous grace to him, gaze fixed on the balcony above. He was watching a girl. She had coral-colored hair, and even from this distance he could tell she was beautiful. She stood there alone, apparently waiting for someone. Whoever it was must have shown up because her hand slipped from the banister, and she stepped away. Not too long after, a man appeared where she had been standing. The man turned a silent glare down into the garden, as if he'd known the boy had been there the whole time, despite the shadows. A shiver ran down the boy's spine, and he smiled reflexively, delighting in the intense aura of threat the man gave off. It was just a warning, it seemed, as the man abruptly turned on his heel and disappeared. "Awa, we can't play together either," the boy hung his head. "I miss you, brother." It had to be the woman. The beauty. She'd made the boy's life hell since the day she arrived. His brother had prohibited him from attending balls like this one. That was fine, he'd sooner avoid them altogether. Still, he'd wanted to meet that girl. "But we'll meet soon enough, won't we?" he spoke to himself in a soft voice. "I've got plans for you, sister." Chapter 3. You're all so useless. Diana, the red-headed maid's voice, rang out inside the stone wash house. 3 days had passed since the afternoon Reijou shook off her guard and came out to the well. Reijou was once again dressed to fit in with the maids. At Diana's shout, she looked up without pausing in her work. "Is even laundry beyond your capabilities? I asked you to wash these this morning, and now it's past noon. Meanwhile, we've finished cleaning the entire first floor in a third of the time." "I'm sorry, Diana." The new maids went silent with shame. Among them was Elsie, the girl Reijou stood up for the other day. Reijou pulled her hands out of the soapy water, gently rinsed them, and said, "Let me help." "What still needs to be done?" "You again." Diana rounded on Reijou. "I don't know who you serve, but I'm amazed you have the time to do other people's work." "I wish I had so much free time." Huffily, she turned from Reijou. "Let's just ignore these useless fools." Laura Maya. "Come on. If we want to be chosen as Lady Reijou's maids, we mustn't waste our time." Diana took out a slip of paper from her pocket, smoothing it out. "It looks like the new bedsheets for her palace will arrive today. We should inspect them to make sure everything is perfect." "Wait up, Diana." The two maids followed Diana out. Reijou waited for the door to close before turning to Elsie and the others. "Let's keep working. If there's anything too large and cumbersome, feel free to pass it over to me." "Thank you so much." The new maids went weak with gratitude. One of them, a girl on the verge of tears, even fell into a full bow. Reijou muttered encouragement as she scrubbed some bedsheets. Elsie, who was washing the sheets with her, wore a rueful look. "I'm so sorry for the trouble. We're just not learning fast enough." "You haven't been working here long, have you?" "It takes time to learn a new job, no matter who you are," Reijou said as she kept scrubbing. "And it's not like you've never washed a single thing in your life before, right?" Elsie nodded nervously. Reijou had realized over the past few days doing the laundry that not all the newcomers were complete amateurs. They'd obviously done chores at home or something similar. When set a specific task, they could perform it properly, but Diana's complaints weren't unfounded. They did take far too much time with laundry. "But it's obvious why." "Do you know anything about Diana?" Reijou asked Elsie. "Like, is she from a well-off family?" Elsie said, "I heard that her father was a business owner." "She worked with him." "I heard that as well," added another maid. "But he fell into debt and had to sell off." Reijou stopped scrubbing for a moment to consider this. Is something the matter?" Elsie asked. Reijou smiled and shook her head. "No, nothing. Let's just focus on getting these washed for the time being." That afternoon, 30 maids were assembled in the detached wing of the palace. 10 of them were old hands, long in service to the royal family, while the other 20 were freshly hired. The crown princess was to choose her maids from among these 30. They wore their nerves plainly on their sleeves. "Hey, I thought this palace was in a terrible state of neglect," one maid whispered. "Why is it so sparkling clean?" "Yeah, you're right," said another. "Someone must have sorted it out before we arrived. I wonder what kind of person Lady Reijou is." "Ooh, I'm so nervous." The girls looked around anxiously. "Hey, Elsie, that girl who was always helping us isn't here." Elsie blinked. "You're right, look, Diana. That impertinent newbie didn't get picked." At her friend's observation, Diana preened with satisfaction. "No surprise there. You need some manners to attend to Lady Reijou." "I bet she got kicked out of the running." Her eyes sparkled with confidence. At last there was a knock at the door. "Her Royal Highness Princess Reijou." The maids quickly fell into bows. Diana's chest ached with anticipation as heels clicked on the floor, approaching the line of girls. From the corner of their eyes, the maids saw a wide-skirted court dress. A gentle scent washed over them. Without even looking at her, they could tell Crown Princess Reijou was a lovely woman. Diana and her friends swelled with pride that she was to become their mistress. But then Laura whispered to Diana, "Hey, isn't this scent familiar?" Quiet, clearly it was some sort of expensive perfume. Or so Diana thought, but then she realized what it was. The words just slipped out. "It's soap, huh? Did you just say something? It's soap. The same kind we always use." Diana was sure of it. The princess said, "Please rise." Why did her voice sound so familiar? An incredible foreboding gripping her, Diana looked up. She gasped. "My name is Reijou Weitzner." Before her stood the beautiful newcomer, the thorn in her side for the past few days. The smile she wore was peaceful and just the slightest bit satisfied. "I'm so glad I managed to finish washing the sheets in time." Standing before the maids with Arnold's attendant Oliver at her side, Reijou was panicking on the inside. She'd had so much to do this morning that she'd put off the laundry to the last minute. She took deep, controlled breaths, praying no one would notice that she'd raced here at a dead sprint. Oliver was none the wiser as he spoke to the assembled girls. Reijou took the opportunity to look them over. She locked eyes with Elsie, who was gaping at her. It was a nice change. Usually her face was as blank as a rock wall. "I'm sorry for the deception. I figured blending in would give me the best picture of your working conditions." The new maids wore similarly shocked expressions, while others watched her with delight. Meanwhile, the veterans, including Diana, had all gone pale. They trembled, stunned into silence. One seemed locked in a terrifying trance, while another looked on the verge of tears. All of them had spoken to Reijou with derision. As the ringleader, Diana was covering her mouth with both hands, like she was holding in a scream. Oliver had finished his introduction. "Your Highness, if you would," Reijou stepped forward. "First, I must apologize to you for what has transpired prior to this meeting. My deception, that is. However, it has granted me insight into how each one of you works." Oliver's face creased in confusion. The newcomer maids began to panic, whispering among themselves. "Doesn't this mean that she helped us out with the laundry? We're going to be fired. If I lose my position, my brother will have to quit school." Noticing the commotion, Oliver glanced at Reijou. "Your Highness, 2/3 of these maids are newly recruited from the city. Since the majority of the castle maids were elderly, His Highness assumed you would prefer maids closer in age to yourself." Reijou was startled. She had found it odd that most of her potential servants were new hires, but she hadn't expected this to be the reason. "While the prince has entrusted the selection of your maids to you," Oliver went on, "hiring someone with no experience will not do. Despite Prince Arnold's views, I urge you to reject the newcomers. Oliver, I have a list of their names here. Elsie, Nishol, Hilda, Marguerite, Rosa." Reijou began listing the names of the newly recruited maids. She'd made a point to memorize them in the wash house. Elke, Amelia, and Oliver looked at her wildly. "You know them all, even though they've never served you in the past." "Yes, of course I do. Servants are essential to the maintenance of our lifestyle. Why wouldn't I get to know them?" Reijou listed the remaining names for good measure. All 20 of you listen to me. The new maids stiffened. Diana and the other maids whose names hadn't been called were getting their wind back, wearing increasingly triumphant looks. Reijou said, "The 20 names I just called will be my maids." Time seemed to stand still a moment, and then Oliver broke in with an astonished, "But my lady. They are all inexperienced, yes. And my palace will be the perfect place to learn." The new recruits were completely speechless, unsure of exactly what was happening. Reijou smiled at Elsie. "I hope you'll serve me well, Elsie." Elsie was still frozen in place. Yes, my lady, but..." A shaking Diana cried out, "But why, my lady? You've seen their work. They're useless, the lot of them. The rest of us get so much more done in a shorter amount of time." "Watch your tongue, girl," Oliver said sharply. Diana ignored him. "We're hard workers. Any job you assign us, we can do it." "Please, I beg you, my lady, step back," Oliver warned. "Do not take a single step closer to Lady Reijou." Diana spoke in a rush, words pouring out of her. I freely admit that I was impolite before, but I didn't know who she was. I'll take any punishment, so please give me the chance to show you how well I can work." Reijou said, "Diana, I have a request." "Thank you, my lady." Diana heaved a sigh of relief. "You mean you'll..." Reijou cut across her. "As of today, you are no longer a maid in this palace." "What?" Her face, usually so fixed with determination, paled. "But why? I'm so much better than any of them. I'll do a perfect job, no matter what task you set before me." "Please don't dismiss me, my lady. Listen to me, Diana." Reijou dropped her lofty tone, speaking as one woman would to another. "You have noticed it, haven't you? No matter what you claim, these new girls aren't worthless. I don't understand. Can you remember your first month in service? How difficult it was?" Diana looked completely bewildered. Her gaze darted around as if looking for help. Pulling herself together, she forced herself to follow Reijou's directions. She thought back and finally alighted on a response. I didn't know how to do the job. Before, when my family was still prominent, I'd washed shirts and bedsheets. Never gowns or military uniforms." "Perfectly reasonable," Reijou said. "Only natural for someone just starting out. The older girls were so busy, they told me to just watch them since they didn't have time to teach me. When I had questions, well, there was nobody to ask. I bet." "And did you have any other problems?" "Well, yes. There was a lot to learn. Different kinds of soap and washboards depending on the cloth. You use different tools for different materials. I had to learn how they worked and how to put them away. I was punished if I didn't get it right the first time." The newcomers were exchanging surprised looks. Reijou understood why. Everything Diana said was familiar to them. They spent valuable time searching for their materials and the proper ways to use them, but they shrank from asking for help. Everyone always looked so busy. This was a universal problem. "Despite all that, I got better," Diana protested. "I only needed to be taught once. Unlike them, they're useless." "Yes, well, there's a difference between you and them," Reijou told Diana. "You can read and write." "Oh," Diana started in surprise. Elsie looked at the floor. The literacy rate among commoners was low no matter where you went. Very few families had the means to afford an education, especially for daughters. Diana had been born to a merchant's family. She'd received formal schooling. The maids she was close friends with were likely from similar backgrounds. The majority of those in service were not so fortunate. What if you only received instructions on how to do a job once and weren't able to write it down to remind yourself later? Reijou asked. "Would you be so confident?" I don't." Diana reflexively thrust a hand into her apron pocket, where she had a list of daily tasks recorded in her neat handwriting to reference throughout the day. Hopefully now she would understand how much of an edge her privileged literacy gave her over the other maids. "Everyone else works as hard as they can, just like you do," Reijou said. "Remember how it was for you at first. They all have to start somewhere. I hope you'll keep that in mind. They're no different from me," Diana mumbled begrudgingly, glancing around the room, looking at the less experienced maids. As if coming to a decision, she said, "I'm sorry. Diana, like a child enumerating her regrets, Diana went on, I've done you wrong, all of you. It's just I had nothing. Or so it felt like. No money, no title. I thought I had to make my way in the world on my own. That I had to start from zero. Her shoulders trembled as she buried her face in her hands. But I was wrong. I wasn't starting from zero. I had everything that I learned growing up. I didn't realize how fortunate I was. I let it all go to my head. Her voice rose to a wail. How could I have said all of those terrible things? Even though you were all working so hard, trying your best even while feeling as helpless as I did all those years ago. I should have understood what you were going through. And I failed you. Oh, Diana, I'm sorry, Diana sobbed. I'm so sorry, the new maids stared at her stunned. But then they clustered around her. It's okay, Diana. We're sorry for not being faster learners. My lady, please reconsider. Diana scared us, but she's always flawless with her work. And that goes for the other maids with more experience than us too. It's fine. Diana scrubbed at her eyes. It makes sense she wants nothing to do with us. Don't beg, Diana. Reijou smiled and held out her hand. Didn't I say that I had a request? I don't want you as a maid. I want you as an instructor. A murmur rose among the maids. Even Oliver looked surprised. I want the inexperienced maids to come to this palace to learn. And not just by observation alone, with thorough demonstrations and explanations. Come up with a system to allow girls to ask their questions, to perform the tasks again and again until they learn them. And once they have all they need, they'll be promoted to work in the main palace for the royal family. Reijou recognized these problems. They were rampant the world over. Those with work didn't have the time to train those who were new to the same work, rendering the amateurs stranded at sea, forced to learn on their own or quit before they even had a chance. If only someone had sat them down to teach them what they needed to know. When you learned from observation rather than foundational skills, mistakes were far more likely. If the palace couldn't afford the staff or the time to train its servants properly, Reijou would take it upon herself. You can't lose a skill once you've acquired it, whether that be reading and writing, how to do a job, or how to teach a job. Knowledge is a weapon you can wield wherever you go, not just here. You can apply your new skills elsewhere, wherever you want. The maids listened to Reijou, wonder in their eyes. That's why I'll be taking the 20 newcomers as my maids. Diana, you and your friends shall teach them. You'll be their tutors, my lady. I would like all my maids to be able to read and write. 1 hour of study a day should be sufficient. You and your friends will be their teachers. I expect you to come up with materials for them as well as a handbook for new maids. Diana was utterly stunned. You want us to teach reading and writing? And write a book. She could never have imagined this sort of opportunity. Reijou drew something from her breast pocket. It was one of Diana's pages of notes. I took a look at this. Where did you get that? Reijou ignored the question. She didn't want to say she'd specifically joined the maids this morning to swipe it. Your handwriting is neat, and your steps are logical and succinct. You have a gift for transcription. I believe you'll make an excellent teacher. Diana's cheeks flushed. You would praise me so. After all of those rude things I said to you. I have no idea what you mean. Diana bit her lip and took Reijou's outstretched hand, then bowed deeply. I will do my utmost to live up to your faith in me. Thank you, excellent. Reijou turned to Elsie and the other new maids. As for the rest of you, you'll have your hands full with your new duties. Let me know if you have any problems or find the workload too taxing. Yes, my lady, and thus came about the formation of Lady Reijou's School for Wayward Maids. Upon his return to the main palace, Oliver made straight for his master's office. Arnold was sitting at his desk. Without looking up, he asked, Has Reijou decided on her maids? About that, Oliver hesitated. Were you aware we had a retention problem? Our turnover is so high we're chronically understaffed. Yes. We raised their wages, if I recall. He tapped his pen to his mouth. I think it's been better than it was. Well, Lady Reijou may have fixed it altogether. Arnold raised his head. She's picked out literate women and asked them to draft teaching materials. She declared a brand new system for training maids. He gave a little amazed shake of the head. On top of that, she managed to endear every one of those girls to her, while at the same time figuring out exactly how each one could be best utilized. Silence. The maids are all excited to begin. There's always been a huge social divide between old and new workers, but Reijou dispensed with it. They're allies now, I see. Arnold's mouth twitched and he went back to writing. Did you predict this, Your Highness? You don't seem very surprised, Arnold snorted. How could I predict something like this? Well, I knew she would do something odd. Using your future wife's eccentricities as entertainment is unbecoming, you know, Oliver chided. Then he grinned. I honestly can't wait to see what she'll do next. Oliver, Arnold cast his eyes down, voice dropping as he said, I did not choose Reijou for the benefit of the country or for my family. Oliver paused. My apologies, Your Highness. He then sat down to see what work needed to be done. Flower petals danced in the wind. Dressed in a linen gown, Reijou hacked away at the soil with a hand hoe. Take that, she'd spent the last few days tilling her future garden, a small corner of a courtyard granted to her by Arnold at her request. This should be enough space for the meantime. Reijou surveyed her tilled land with satisfaction. Buckets of mulch sat nearby, fertile soil she'd collected from a deciduous tree in the garden. With an enormous heave, she picked up a bucket and began scattering soil over the tilled ground. By the time she was finished, her arms were numb. I need to start working out. This body had belonged to a sedentary noblewoman until recently, with no muscle density or stamina to speak of. She found it far inferior to the forms she'd cultivated as a knight or an apothecary tending her garden. Her mind knew the motions, but her conditioning couldn't stand up to it. Still, she wanted to get more work done before her aching body forced her to pack it in. Taking a break from the bucket, she began hacking away with her hoe, aerating the soil by mixing it together with the mulch. She took care to remove any roots she came across, but she wasn't as thorough as she could have been. She was curious to see what unfamiliar flowers might bud between her rows of plants. Her knights, standing guard a little ways away, watched Reijou curiously. Diana soon joined them, her eyes going round as saucers. My lady, what are you doing? Oh, this. I'm tilling a field. But you're the future empress. When Reijou finished mixing the dirt, she formed the soil into soft ridges. It was ready for planting, but Reijou decided it would be best to let it sit and acclimate to the sunlight for the time being. She wiped the sweat from her brow, grinning at the flabbergasted Diana. Sorry to keep you waiting. Are you ready to show me what you've come up with? Oh, yes, Diana nervously presented Reijou the document. The paper had neat lines of handwriting and charming little doodles of brooms and dust cloths. I was thinking that the first words the newcomers should learn how to read are the words for cleaning equipment. Diana was still clad in the maid's dress, though she had removed her apron. She plucked at her skirts anxiously. These are words they use daily in their work, she added. I thought it would be helpful. Good thinking, Reijou said. I agree. Diana's expression momentarily brightened before fading back into gloom. Maybe she didn't feel as confident as she'd first appeared. To be honest, I wonder if they wouldn't be happier learning how to read and write their own names first. True. It's certainly good to consider the likes and dislikes of your students. Reijou recalled the life she'd spent as a maid and the son of the manor who had been taught to read by a private tutor. He'd practice with such concentration and then run over to show her. Tapping her chin, she said, but with the names, they wouldn't be able to review together, nor could they help each other out if someone forgets. And you'd have to teach them one by one instead of all together. Does that make sense? Yes, I see. Diana breathed a sigh of relief. I think teaching them how to read and write the words that they can immediately use for work is a wonderful idea. I'd be thrilled if I were your student. You're too kind. Diana glowed, hugging the paper to herself. I actually quite enjoy this work, my lady. It's even more fun than coming up with insults. Reijou laughed. I'm glad to hear that, but if you don't mind me asking, my lady, why bother with this? Why are you offering us so much help? Well, Reijou hesitated long enough that they were interrupted by Elsie, who sidled up meekly. My lady, it's about time to get ready. Reijou nodded. Excuse me, Diana. I have an appointment. Keep up the good work, of course. Oh, Diana, Elsie smiled shyly. Can we do another review after dinner tonight? Diana lit up. Of course. Make sure you're prepared because none of you are going to bed until you get every answer right. Elsie giggled, waving as she and Reijou returned to the detached wing. The bath is ready, my lady. Perfect. I need to wash off all of this sweat and dirt. I'll need to wash my hair too. Elsie, will you lay out my finest gown and help me with my hair? Reijou almost skipped in excitement at who she was going to see afterward. Elsie trotted behind her, puzzled. I heard that gentleman is a merchant. Do you really need to wear your best gown? I guess you have a point. But trust me on this, it'll all work out. Oh, the area trading company's guild master, a man named Tully, was due to arrive in a few hours. This was the merchant company that had given Reijou a helping hand in her very first life. Everything she learned about commerce, she learned from Tully. The value of goods, strategies for judging a trading partner. He taught her to spend money to make more of it, warning her against get-rich-quick schemes. Reijou owed her apprenticeship to Tully without a doubt. With the area trading company on her side, Reijou would greatly expand her pool of allies. They could assist her if she needed a quick escape from Galkeen, fleeing divorce or banishment. They could shore up a supply route for a war. Or, of course, Reijou had to make it worth their while. If I can make this deal, we'll have a connection. Now, how do I snag Tully on my hook? Reijou climbed out of the bath, pondering the question as she dried off and put on her fanciest gown. It's early enough in the timeline that they haven't been long established. Any ordinary company would be champing at the bit to nab an imperial wedding. But with Tully, I'm not so sure. Reijou ruminated on this as Elsie did her hair. When at last she was ready, she blinked her way out of her fugue and looked in the mirror. Her hair was done in soft curls, her gown a stunning blood red. This time she did wear jewelry, lots of it, and carried a feathered fan. Hard to decide what vibe to go for. A tasteless, gaudy spendthrift and therefore an easy mark. Or a noblewoman so high in the instep she'll spare no expense. Elsie looked at her dubiously. My lady, I tried my best to put your hair up to match the dress with a few loose pieces to complete the look, but she trailed off. Elsie was exceptional at picking outfits and coordinating styles. She'd been dressing her own little sisters for years. Reijou squared her shoulders. If she was scaring her own lady's maid, that must mean her ploy was working. I appreciate it, Elsie. But today I'm dressed for battle. Leaving her baffled maid behind, Reijou went to meet the area trading company. Escorted by 2 guards, she made her way to the main palace. Her own villa was not yet equipped with a suitable receiving room for guests. The footman bowed her into the parlor, allowing the guards to step inside first to ensure the room was secure. A handsome, brown-skinned man stood waiting for her. Your Highness, I am Kind Tully, chairman of the area trading company. He smiled amiably and bowed. May I congratulate you on your upcoming wedding? Tully had combed back his famously unkempt hair and shaved far closer than she'd ever seen him bother. He also did not appear to be hungover, which made for an equally large change. Reijou Weitzna. I appreciate you taking the time. I imagine it was a journey of some distance. Please sit, he thanked her and sat. Reijou lowered herself into her own chair with great dignity. She felt him gauging her, watching her with the dark, hooded eyes that tavern girls across the continent swooned over. It feels like he can see through me with a single glance. And I wouldn't expect anything less. Not that he was ogling, his gaze was perfectly correct. But he'd been watching her since she came in. I say this is a lovely time of year, isn't it? Tully began. I believe your wedding is planned for halfway through the 8th month, is that right? A summer bride. How marvelous, Tully grinned. The citizens of Galkeen must be overjoyed to have such a lovely woman as their future empress. You flatter me. Reijou smiled at the empty compliments, mind fixed on the past. MWA ha ha. I knew he wouldn't know a fake sapphire when he saw one. Idiot. We took bets on whether you could dupe that intermediary, and I had my money on you, Reijou. Thanks for helping me fleece my bird-brain staff. Reijou, here's your final examination. We took a loss of 5 million in gold due to negligence. Not yours, someone else's, but you are the one who's going to make it back. Oh, and by the way, you've got 1 week, so get cracking. Please, Reijou, I'm begging you. Tell Arya that woman I had over last night was just a friend. She had a faraway look in her eyes. That was fine. Let Tully think she was dreaming of her bright future. The white of a wedding dress will complement your features, if I might be so bold. Perhaps a gown of layered silk. With that, Tully smoothly shifted from small talk to business. Reijou was relieved to have passed his assessment. That sounds superb, Mr. Tully. As I'm sure you've been told, I wish to engage the area trading company to assist me in assembling everything we will need for the ceremony. I've heard great things about you, have you? How kind, to cut to the chase, have you brought anything to show me today? I'd love to see my options. The messenger had been instructed to tell them Reijou was considering their company for everything. She imagined Tully had brought a whole legion of carts weighed down with fripperies to sell her. If I make this deal, we'll have an established connection. I just need to close this. Unfortunately, I cannot sell to you, my lady. At this, Reijou froze. Tully shrugged, his smile still in place. Or rather, I will not sell to you. What? Why, the area trading company was essential for her future plans. She needed them. Over the next few years, Tully would expand his personal connections and trade routes. He would be a main supplier of future inventions. His company would grow to a global scale. Without them, Reijou's easy link to the levers of power in every nation evaporated. Tully continued to smile at her blandly. My lady, quite frankly, your insistence doesn't match my offerings. My insistence, you appear ready to stake your life on this deal. Am I wrong? Reijou nearly lost her composure then. With a huge effort, she willed her expression into one of polite confusion. His deep, long-lashed eyes were openly searching her now. It seemed they were past pretense. Let's speak plainly, my lady, Tully said. We're discussing wedding preparations. I know that for a crown princess, your wedding will be your crowning jewel. However, his eyes narrowed. You have the look of a woman staring down death. Whatever you're after, it isn't a flawless marriage ceremony or a well-heeled soiree. And I don't like complications. With a gasp, Reijou remembered something Tully had said to her a long time ago, become an easy choice for the customer. Offer them goods and value they won't find anywhere else. And once you're established, you pick the customers. Tully already had reliable trade. He wouldn't risk a deal with an unknown entity who might incur losses down the line, no matter how high-ranking they were. Reijou had been thoroughly screened out of Tully's customer base. This is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. Reijou took care not to betray any dismay. I'm sorry if I appeared overeager. I don't have any event planning experience. Tully let out a good-natured laugh. You have nothing to worry about. I'm sure you'll find the perfect business partner. Unfortunately, my company will not be it. Tully stood up and executed a bow so elegant she knew it was meant to mock her. It was an honor to be invited to speak with you. Now, if you'd please excuse me, Mr. Tully, Gaoqin is a lovely country. Tully cut her off roundly. I believe we may spend a few days here to relax and take in the sights. One of your attendants even steered us to a suitable inn. Please wait. Let us discuss things a bit. Farewell, my lovely future majesty. Tully left before Reijou could mount a protest. I had no chance back there, Reijou thought, idly sipping a cup of tea. She'd shed the ridiculous jewels and changed into a plain, serviceable gown that was easier to move in. She was sitting in her parlor in the detached wing with a plate of fresh-baked cookies in front of her, but she couldn't even summon up the energy to try one. I admit I was nervous, but I thought I maintained my composure well enough. Yet he still saw through me. I lost that round, no doubt about it. The truth was, she'd never beaten Tully. Not even in her subsequent lives when she knew what to expect. Around her, her maids chattered among themselves. He finally proposed. Wow, I'm so happy for you. The girls had finished their studies for the day and they too were clustered around drinking tea. On most days, Reijou would join in. Today she barely heard them. Awa, I hope I meet a man that wonderful someday. Maybe he was simply being cautious. He doesn't jump into deals that look too good to be true. Still, did he really read the desperation in my face? He's a gambler at heart. This isn't like him. After much thinking, she only had one conclusion. He didn't choose me, and that's a fact. Reijou sat in quiet dejection. Without the trading company's connections, she couldn't appeal to powerful people, and she couldn't prevent the war. Without that, her happy life wouldn't last. And as loath as she was to admit it, Reijou hated being met with Tully's disapproval. She'd wanted to take her old boss for everything he had. Also, something he said was still bothering her. That couldn't have been an accident, could it? Speaking of weddings, what about you, my lady? One of the maids cried. How did His Highness propose to you? Oh, I've been wondering too, chirped another. All the girls in the city are dying to know. He said specifically that he'd be staying in Gaokin over the next couple of days. He even told me how to find the name of the inn. My lady, the maids gave her concerned looks as Reijou began to smile. I'm so sorry. I'm feeling a bit indisposed. I think I'll retire for the night. The maids all chimed in with concern. Reijou waved them off. No need. I'll join you for tea another day. I won't require dinner this evening either. As you wish, my lady. We'll be sure to let you rest, and we'll have plenty of tea ready tomorrow morning. Reijou thanked the girls for their understanding, then went to her chambers and locked the door. In her hands were a few packets of herbs. You're in fine form tonight, sir. Kind Tully strode down the streets of Gaokin's capital, flanked by his employees, who commended him on his festive enjoyment of the local spirits. He was in a good mood, his shirt half unbuttoned, nearly humming with pleasure as he said, Gaokin has wonderful liquor. We should buy up the whole store to sell up north. Why would we do that, sir? You just drink our profits down before we even got them in the wagons. Yes, hilarious. Not wrong, though, he laughed with his men as they made their way back to the inn. He'd have preferred to bring a woman or two back with him, but he had his reasons. Say, I'm still thirsty. Another round. I'm sure the tavern floor can pull a decent pint. Indeed, raucous voices floated from the taproom. The mood seemed to be good tonight. Sir, I've been thinking. One of his employees was so drunk he could barely stand. That was the Gaokin crown princess. I can't believe you just blew her off. Working with royals is bad business, you dolt. Believe me, I know, isn't she 15? What did she do to you? Tully snorted, swinging open the door to the inn. Listen, that little girl is, welcome back, mister. Tully, that voice sobered him instantly. Tully forced a stiff smile. Sitting poised at a table was Lady Reijou, the future crown princess. Thank you for your invitation, Reijou purred. So very kind of you. It took a lot to surprise Tully, but the sight in front of him caught him completely off guard. He'd predicted she would come, but not so soon. He thought she'd disguise herself, but he truthfully had not anticipated the mousy brown of freshly dyed hair. No, that wasn't what surprised him. What drew him up short was the score of unconscious men seated around her, half-full mugs still gripped in their hands. Would you care to join me for a drink, mister? Tully had to clear his throat several times before he managed to ask, what happened to those guys? Oh, we bet on who could hold their liquor and they lost. Reijou grinned and tilted her glass. Don't worry, I'm not here for drinking games. I was hoping we could continue our discussion. The inn Reijou sat in was near the imperial palace. She'd asked the innkeeper to clear out everyone who'd passed out. The onlookers of the drinking game were gathered around excitedly. Ya sure can hold your liquor, missy. I couldn't challenge you since I don't drink, but lemme treat you anyway for putting on such a good show. Why, thank you, Reijou said. Here, try this. The chicken with melted cheese goes great paired with wine. This is delicious, Reijou said. Thank you, Reijou looked with satisfaction at the food and drink piled on the table. She wished she could relish her victory, but her adversary sat across from her, watching her coolly. When their eyes met, Tully offered a crooked smile. Well, I certainly wouldn't have anticipated that you'd drink my men under the table while you waited. What a fool I was. Oh, they were your employees, Reijou asked, her voice airy. We were having such a good time, though I admit we got rather carried away. Naturally, Reijou knew who they were. During her time working with the area trading company, Reijou had beaten all of her co-workers at a drinking game at their very first banquet. The ones she'd competed against tonight were the very same people. Tully wore the same look then too. Reijou had been brought up at court, she had a high tolerance for spirits. Drink, Tully accepted the glass she pushed toward him, eyeing her. You did a fair job with your hair, thank you. The color does stand out, I figured this would be easiest. She dyed her hair chestnut brown with the herbs the knights picked on their journey to Galkeen. It would wash out easily with hot water, very useful for temporary disguises. I'll trade the recipe for the chance to do business. Tully laughed. Nice try, he leaned forward on his elbows, eyes glinting. You can do better than that. And I suspect you will. Reijou let that wash over her. His surety made her nervous. What did he know? Shall we open negotiations, my lady? First, a toast. Please address me as you would anyone. The disguise is worthless if you keep my ladying me. Besides, a pause. Hearing it from you is odd. Tully gave her a quizzical look. Well, okay. If that's what you'd prefer. He raised his mug and Reijou clinked hers against it. Tully drained half of his in one go, letting out a long breath. Just miss, then. Anyway, stop with the charade. I know this isn't about a dress. Yes, tricks don't work on you, it seems. Glad that's been established. Tully drained the rest of his drink. My instincts tell me you aren't a customer. You're a potential partner, so he had lured her out here. Once again, Reijou felt how truly out of her depth she was. But she had no choice but to get him on her side. He had once been her boss and her ally, but now things were different. Tell me every little detail about whatever money-making scheme you've concocted, Mr. Tully, I'm not agreeing to anything until I know exactly what you're doing. Despite how I look, I'm very good at my job. Whatever you hope to bring in, I can double it, Mr. Tully, I'll come up with the perfect strategy. Now tell me I cannot. He gave her a sharp look. What? I cannot disclose my plan. Nevertheless, I want to be able to depend on the area trading company when the time comes. His mouth twisted into a grin. That's quite a bold ask, miss. You want a handshake deal based on, what? Promises and starshine. I don't do that sort of business. You'll be well compensated, of course. You're expecting me to go in with you for the potential of profit. Reijou wished she could blurt everything out, tell him that in the next few years her husband-to-be would kill his father and throw the world into turmoil. Obviously, she held her tongue. Listen, miss. When I decide whether to go into business with a person, I mostly go off my instincts. But I also emphasize, previous results and track record correct. Tully looked stunned. She had completely caught him off guard. How do you? I'll sell something in the city. If it is well received and you judge me worthy of your time, can we talk? Tully stared at Reijou a moment before he burst out laughing. Oh, go on. A gamble. Now that's how I like to do things. Believe me, I know. Next you'll tell me to hit a profit goal in a specified time frame. You've got 1 week. I look forward to seeing what you come up with, miss. Reijou smiled, emptied her glass, and then stood up. We have an agreement then. Thank you for your time. Ah, and when your people wake tomorrow, give them this. Tully held up one of the little packets of herbs. Oh, what's this? They'll find out, Reijou said and made her exit. Reijou returned to her balcony with the rope of bedsheets left dangling in the courtyard, pulling herself up hand over hand. The inn was only 10 minutes from the palace, but sneaking out had been an ordeal. She moved quietly across stonework to conceal her footsteps from the guards posted at her door. It seems I wasn't missed. In the morning, I'll have to hide beneath the bed curtains until Elsie brings me hot water. I've got to get my hair color back to normal before anyone starts asking questions. Reijou pushed open the glass door to her chambers. She gasped. Arnold sat in the room's only chair, legs crossed. You're out late, what are you doing here? Reijou hadn't seen him since the party a few nights ago. He didn't yet have his own chambers in their detached palace, and she'd heard he was still laboring under a mountain of work. As far as Reijou knew, he'd only been here once. Why did his second visit have to be the night she snuck out? You met with the merchant from the area trading company today, no? Arnold asked. He stared at her with his chin propped on his fist, as usual. The lamp by the bedside flickered, flames guttering. The chamber was too dim to read his expression. I was waiting to know what you intended to buy, but I didn't hear from you all day. I asked your guards for a report, and they told me the merchant declined your contract. Arnold stood and took a single step toward her. A curious thing for him to refuse a future empress. Sensing danger, Reijou reflexively took a step back, despite knowing there was nothing behind her but the wall. A few steps more and she'd be cornered. When you singled out the area trading company, I figured you already had a relationship with them. My fiancée doesn't seem the sort of woman to choose business partners recklessly, after all. Arnold's high-buttoned collar was undone, loose enough to reveal his collarbones. One might expect that to make him look vulnerable, but on the contrary. The moonlight glittered on his scarred neck and marble-like features. He looked amused on the surface, but something savage stalked in his eyes. Reijou thought again of a wolf. I was curious. I took a break to see you, but even from outside I could tell your chambers were vacant. When Arnold killed her, they'd stood at about this distance. Was that the past? The future? Regardless, her heart sped up. Tension winched the space between her shoulders tight. The aura of threat was different this time, though. Reijou couldn't have given it a name. I did tell you to live however you like. Getting angry would be illogical. I dismissed your guards and decided to patiently await your return. Your Highness, how interesting. Arnold pressed his hands to the wall, trapping Reijou between his arms. He grinned wolfishly. I suppose even a woman like you fears a man late at night, alone in her chamber. Reijou sucked in a breath, stunned by the comment. Then she realized she was angry at herself, not at him. She shouldn't have let him read the fear in her eyes. Besides, she'd made a tactical error. I'm sorry, she said from the heart. The twisted grin slid off Arnold's face. He looked down at her in silence. I wasn't thinking. I didn't consider how having your fiancé creeping around town at night could damage your reputation. Reijou's mistakes had always been her own to bear. But this was different. Even if she really had been a hostage, with this whole charade just for form's sake, she'd forgotten she was about to become someone's wife. She was willing to shoulder a scandal should she be found out, but that wasn't her choice to make. Arnold said, "That's not why I'm upset." Reijou had been avoiding his gaze, but this startled her into looking back at him. I doubt anyone in the city would recognize you. They've only seen you once, and from inside a coach at that. And you dyed your hair too. It would be one thing if I actually believed you meant to cuckold me, but I imagine you went out to negotiate with the area trading company. You're too kind, Your Highness. Arnold frowned. Anyway, that isn't what occupies my mind, so... What then, Your Highness? Are you hurt? The question took her by surprise. Why would he ask that? No, I'm fine. You didn't get mixed up in a crime, did you? Reijou started. No, Arnold released his breath. Next time you want to creep out under cover of night, take me with you. Understand? Wait, are you serious? Arnold removed his hands from the wall, releasing Reijou. Don't you remember what I said? Once we're married, you can do whatever you want. And I'll help you do it. Reijou shook her head. I couldn't possibly hold you to my whims. Don't worry, I'll be more prudent from now on. I said you could do as you pleased, but I don't want you endangering yourself. Oh, Reijou's voice came out a little hoarse. You pamper me too much. She wasn't sure what to make of this because she had no idea why he was doing it. I know you well enough already to be confident that if I confine you to the palace grounds, you'll take it as a challenge. Arnold sat back down, his usual calm smile returning. I realize that if I don't want you to blow away on the wind, I'll need to attach some strings. Reijou felt the strength suddenly go out of her. She sat down on the edge of the bed. Am I that predictable? On the contrary, I can't predict you at all. You both love this, don't you? You and Mr. Tully. Reijou clenched a fist, annoyed beyond belief that she'd been seen through by not one but two men in the same day. As usual, I can't guess at his motives. But for Arnold Hine to let me run roughshod over his name and reputation, there must be something. She needed to take better advantage of his lax oversight, yet she couldn't prevent stirrings of guilt. She wanted to prevent a war, but she didn't want to do it at the cost of being a bad wife. But if Arnold responded to her willfulness by offering her more privileges and not less, well, that was his own affair. Mr. Tully, was that his name? Arnold went on. Tell me what happened between you and the area trading company. Reijou felt the exhaustion burning through her limbs. Your Highness, may I ask you something completely unrelated to this discussion? Yes, are you hungry? Arnold blinked at her, nonplussed. Reijou stood in the small kitchen of the palace, chopping herbs the knights had brought her from their morning patrol of the city's perimeter. She made short work of it, gathering the herbs on the cutting board and scraping them into the pot along with onions and bacon and other delights. She left it to simmer, the aroma filling the kitchen. It was a small space, only ever used for making breakfast, and therefore completely deserted at night. Reijou glanced over her shoulder. Are you sure you don't want to wait back in my chambers? Arnold sat on a wooden chair in the corner, leaning against the bare table beside him with his head in his hand as he watched Reijou make the soup. No, I'm fine here, if you say so. This couldn't be exciting, could it? He'd also just sat there watching as she attacked her dyed hair with hot water and a towel. Maybe he just likes people watching, she thought as she stirred the soup. Sensing it was done, she scooped some out into a small dish and tried it. After a moment of silence, she added salt. She stirred it again and tasted it. She squeezed her eyes shut, poured in some water, adding pepper once it was boiling. Then some more chopped herbs, just in case, before trying it again. The taste brought her quickly to her senses. What have I done? Regret welled inside her. What a terrible decision, made purely out of exhaustion, inviting the Crown Prince to a kitchen so late and then making him soup. Your Highness, Reijou passed the bowl of soup from hand to hand. I'm going to apologize in advance. Advance of what? Wandering around the city again in the middle of the night. Well, yes, I'll apologize for that as well. I should have thought this through, so I feel really bad about it, but she took a deep breath to ready herself for the admission. Admitting weakness to a former enemy was difficult, not to mention embarrassing. Indeed, she was only doing it to prevent greater misfortune down the road. She struggled to find the right words. Finally, she managed to look Arnold in the eye and let out a strangled, I'm bad at cooking. Oh, a fleeting look passed over his face, one Reijou had never seen before. It was gone too fast for her to divine its meaning. Is that so? I invited you here out of hunger and exhaustion, and I've made a huge mess of things. I shouldn't have offered. I'm so sorry. Well, I admit I was a bit confused, Arnold said. I don't know any noblewomen who can cook. Fair enough, Reijou trailed off. In her previous lives, she ate primarily to keep herself alive. She preferred food that tasted good, of course, but she'd take time to sleep over the time spent preparing a good meal. In her last life as a knight, she would at most boil a potato and add some salt. Easy. From her time as an apothecary, Reijou knew that brewing medicines and cooking weren't that different. You just added the right ingredients in the right quantities, chopping and boiling in a pot rather than a beaker. On the other hand, cooking was intrinsically different. You wanted it to actually taste good, and to do that, you needed to understand how to marry the flavors involved and the methods by which to enhance them. She wouldn't have cared if she were the only one eating this soup. She had gone this far with making this meal, but she felt too ashamed to feed it to Arnold as well. It took so long and now it won't be good. Arnold said nothing. I'll go fetch you something more edible from the main kitchens, just hold on a bit longer. Then we can talk about the area. Before she could finish, Arnold stood up, grabbed the dish from Reijou, and tasted the soup all in one smooth motion. Hey, Reijou's surprise momentarily delayed her reaction speed. Ignoring her dismay, Arnold said, this is actually pretty good. She gawked at him. What? Arnold finished off the rest of the dish. I'm fine with soup, you're lying. I don't believe you. Reijou tried the soup again. It was just bad. Certainly not worthy of praise and definitely not something to serve a prince, or anyone else for that matter. Why would he pretend to like it? A memory popped into her head. Arnold standing on the balcony and drinking the capsicum-tainted wine. It was just spicy but still not very drinkable. Is there something wrong with his taste buds? Hey, you're thinking something unflattering about me, he pouted. I can tell. Reijou, with a rush of fresh embarrassment, realized that Arnold was trying to be kind. She floundered for a beat. Thank you, she said rather nonsensically. You have me starving. Let's get the dishes out. Moving automatically, Reijou quickly set the table. After that, there was nothing to do but dine on the unique soup. Typically, Reijou spent her meals alone. She'd never eaten with Arnold before, even during their journey. He was always busy with something or other, be it paperwork or directing the nights. This scene took on a sense of unreality, eating bad soup with a prince in the middle of the night. They chatted a bit as they ate. When they were finished, Reijou felt sufficiently recovered to finally discuss the situation, the whole reason Arnold had come. Despite that, she insisted on clearing the dishes first. Basically, I need them to agree to my unreasonable orders, and to do that, I must make them a profit. A rather vague explanation of her plan, but surely that was better than a long and boring one. Arnold was frowning, so she added, the area trading company wants to expand its influence worldwide into a leading business, you see. I predict they'll acquire unique, otherwise unattainable goods as they expand their trading routes. Their track record over the past 2 years supports that, or so I've heard, Arnold agreed. I want their cooperation. That's why I contacted them, but they declined my business because my goals are opaque. Therefore, I suggested different terms, which are, Arnold asked with some trepidation. I have 1 week to bring Mr. Tully a business idea that will be popular in the imperial capital. If I can meet his standards, he'll make me into a trading partner. Hearing this unvarnished explanation, Arnold subsided into silence. No doubt he wanted a more robust story, but just like with Tully, Reijou couldn't tell him everything. Arnold was the one who was going to start the war she sought to prevent. She couldn't afford him catching on to her motives. She braced herself for his response, but all he said was, fine. Huh, she blurted, staring at him. Fine, I said. I understand your aims. Reijou didn't know what to say. You're not going to ask me what my plans are for the area trading company. You suggested these other terms instead because you're hiding something, right? And I doubt you want to tell me. Well, you're right, you won't tell me, so why bother to ask? More pressingly, what deal do you plan to offer him? He'd touched a sore spot. Reijou hung her head. I have a few ideas, but nothing foolproof. I don't know the area or the consumer base. I haven't been here long enough to know what's popular. That kind of investigation took time, which Tully knew as well as she did. Hence the short deadline. In other words, this will cause you difficulty. Yes, his tone held something she couldn't glean, and she looked over to find him grinning slyly. I look forward to watching this play out. I knew it. Reijou couldn't see through to Arnold's true intentions, but she was beginning to notice a pattern. He still looked good even when he was smirking arrogantly, the bastard. Reijou stewed in her annoyance as Arnold rose from his seat. Like I've told you before, you're free to do whatever you like. I'll retire to the main palace. Very well. Have a good night. In the doorway he looked back. Reijou, have you met my brother yet? Your brother? This was the first she'd heard of him. No, I don't think I have. Well, I suppose it's possible since I don't know what he looks like. Good. Arnold hesitated. Should he approach you, I ask that you avoid speaking to him any way you can. His name is Theodore, right? May I ask why I shouldn't speak with him? It wasn't exactly an amicable way to act toward a future brother-in-law. It's better if you don't know. Reijou was quiet for a moment. If that's what you want. Arnold left, closing the door behind him. The next day, Reijou headed out to her garden, despairing over how best to begin her investigation into her business plan. Just then, voices rang out behind her, catching her off guard. My lady, please, you must return to your chambers at once. His Highness will be so angry. Please, I beg you. Reijou surveyed the knights as they tripped over each other in concern. What in the world? A boy lay sprawled in the freshly tilled dirt, apparently napping. Reijou did not recognize him from any of her many lives. He had hair as black as Arnold's, and even asleep, he radiated an androgynous beauty. Bewildered, she muttered, "And I just finished tilling this soil too, my lady," a knight yelped. "That's not the issue," he was right. Black hair was unusual on this continent, so it was obvious who this boy was. "That's His Royal Highness Prince Theodore, I thought so." The beautiful boy snoozing away in the dirt was indeed Arnold's little brother. "I can't believe I have to deal with him, literally the day after Arnold warned me not to." She'd never known of Theodore's existence before this life. Coming from abroad, she had no reason to study the makeup of the Galkine imperial family. All she knew about the boy was what she had heard since her arrival. If I remember correctly, he's 4 years younger than Prince Arnold. Which means he's 15 like me. There were 6 children in the Galkine imperial family. Arnold and Theodore were the only male heirs, which meant the other 4 were all princesses. Theodore began to stir, sending the knights back into a fuss. "Lady Reijou, please." "You must leave at once," the boy murmured. "MMNGH, did someone say Reijou? Oops." The knight slapped a hand over his mouth as his partner smacked him from behind. Theodore's eyelids fluttered open in response to hearing Reijou's name. They were the same blue as Arnold's, reflecting the sky. He put up an arm to ward off the sun, looking up at her. "You're my brothers," it seemed he did know about her. "It is an honor to make your acquaintance, Prince Theodore." "I'm so sorry I haven't greeted you before now." Reijou smiled warmly, despite choosing her words with all appropriate caution. "My name is Reijou Irmgard Weitzna. As fate would have it, I shall soon join the imperial household. Flawed as I am, I will do my utmost to be a valuable member of your family, more like a lazy member of the family. But I digress." Theodore blinked at her sleepily. She prayed the knights wouldn't overreact again. "I don't expect a warm welcome." Reijou was a hostage, after all. From Galkine's point of view, she was nothing more than a duke's daughter from a minor nation. As she awaited what move he'd make, Theodore sat up and smiled. "It's nice to meet you, my radiant sister-in-law." Reijou's eyes fluttered in surprise. His grinning face was unbelievably pretty, almost feminine. "What a stroke of luck, us meeting like this. I sent my brother so many notes, but he never replied. Although now that I see you, I understand why he'd want to keep such a lovely lady all to himself. You flatter me, Your Highness." He laughed, delighted. "Please, no formalities. Be at ease." His smile was frank and friendly. These 2 brothers are like night and day. They were both exceptionally handsome, but Theodore's bearing was utterly in contrast. She might not have guessed they were related if she hadn't already known. Their features are the same in color, but their eyes and lips are just so different. Their manners certainly don't match either. "Whoopsie. Can't shake your hand if I've got all this dirt on me." Theodore rose to his feet, brushing the soil off himself. He was a bit taller than Reijou, but much shorter than Arnold. "I'm Theodore August Hein, Arnold's little brother and second in line for the throne." Theodore held out his hand. Reijou returned his friendly grin as she shook it. "A pleasure, Your Highness." From the corner of her eye, Reijou marked the knight's nerves. They'd likely been ordered to keep Reijou and Theodore apart, yet they couldn't openly force Reijou away from him. "What brings you to this corner of the grounds?" "I myself was on a walk when I was overcome with drowsiness," Theodore said. "No, actually this is my field." "It is." Theodore's eyes widened. "That's incredible. The soil around here is usually so hard. This spot gets the perfect amount of sun, and you can hear the birds too. The plants will no doubt love it as much as I do." "How gracious of you to say. I was planning to begin seeding today, Your Highness. Then I can't sleep here again, huh?" His grin turned cheeky. "Oh, I want to ask you something." Theodore crouched down and pointed. "Would you mind taking a look at this? Is something wrong? Come here and look." "That's strange, isn't it?" He was pointing at what appeared to be a completely ordinary patch of dirt. Reijou crouched down to get a closer look, and that was when Theodore whispered to her, "I want to save you, Reijou Irmgard Weitzner." She didn't reply at first, and Theodore looked at her with reverent sincerity. "I pity you. Dragged all the way here, not as a bride but a captive." As far as I know, no empress has ever led a happy life in Galkeen. With his back turned to the knights, his pleasant expression melted off his face like ice. I want to speak to you somewhere away from prying eyes. Reijou sighed. Your Highness, a strange zeal filled Theodore's captivating eyes. I'll tell you how you can run away from him. Reijou knew very little about the Galkeen imperial family. Perhaps this was one of the inciting incidents that would land Arnold in a war. Or specifically, Theodore was. In which case, it would be in her interest to accept his offer to meet in secret. However, Reijou smiled. Prince Arnold warned me not to subject myself to unnecessary dangers. What? As it so happens, he scolded me about it just last night, Reijou explained modestly. I can't allow myself to be alone with another man. It would be imprudent, just imagine the rumors. Theodore gaped at her, then quickly hid it behind a scowl. You don't know who my brother really is. How he acts when he has a sword in his hand. How ruthless he is on the battlefield. Believe me, I am quite aware of who he is, and not just that, but you never know, he might try to kill. Yes, I know. Reijou knew it so well, she relived it in her dreams. She stood back up with an indulgent smile. There's nothing wrong here, Your Highness. I would ask you to leave the field as you found it. She said it loudly for the benefit of the knights, so as to make it seem their whole chat had been one about the soil. Theodore was still crouched, but the ugly expression had vanished from his pretty face. Just now, he reminded me of his brother. Well, Arnold possessed a degree more subtlety, he wouldn't have lured her over in such an obvious way. He doesn't seem hostile toward me, but every mention of his brother sets him on edge. And calling himself second in line for the throne, that's no way to introduce yourself to your older brother's fiancée. Theodore had emphasized Arnold's ruthlessness. He wanted Reijou to fear him. I know what Arnold Hine is like on the battlefield, but to speak that way of your own brother. Wait, a thought struck her. Why am I so angry about this? It shouldn't have mattered to her what Arnold's little brother said about him. She curtsied to Theodore with all due ceremony as she contemplated this curiosity. I must fetch my hoe to loosen the soil now that it's been flattened. By your leave, Your Highness. After waiting for a response she didn't receive, Reijou started to walk away, leaving the prince to stare at the ground. The knights bowed as well before following her. Hopefully this was enough to set something into motion. After this conversation, she was certain Arnold himself was the reason she hadn't yet been introduced to the royal family. Let's see Prince Theodore, 4 sisters, the Empress, and the current Emperor. I want to speak to him the most. But without even a basic introduction, that seemed like it'd be a long way off. She turned this over in her mind and remembered Arnold's orders from last night, don't talk to my brother. Clearly, neither of them thought favorably of the other. But that wasn't rare for siblings, was it? Why would Arnold warn me? He might have been afraid Prince Theodore would harm me. Or perhaps he fears Prince Theodore and I will join forces and conspire against him. No, maybe it really is to keep Theodore from doing something nefarious to me. Why would Arnold prioritize Reijou over his own brother, though? She looked back thoughtfully at the knights as they followed her down the cloister between her wing and the main palace. Tell me, do the princes get along well? The answer was obvious, but the knights looked shaken all the same. My lady, I'm afraid it is not our place to judge such matters. I suppose not, Reijou hummed. Then were you ordered to make sure I stay away from Prince Theodore? It is not our place to say, he repeated. Their evasion was answer enough, and Reijou felt a little guilty manipulating them. My apologies, I know it's an odd question. I'll arrange for a ration of spirits to be sent to the barracks this evening. You're too kind, my lady, one said eagerly. We're all grateful for your refreshments, said another. Everyone always talks about how remarkably well you seem to understand us. She laughed. Of course she understood them, she had first-hand experience with the knightly mind. Regardless, I do need information. If they won't speak openly with me, I'll be forced to use another method. A familiar voice drifted over from around the corner. Arrange for the troops. I'll contact you shortly about the organization of the platoon. Oh. Reijou rounded a bend and found herself at the training grounds. There she spotted Arnold. He was speaking with a man on the verge of old age. Reijou remembered him. He was a count who worked in military affairs. She'd met him at the banquet. The count stood with two knights, facing Arnold with an air of discontent. With all due respect, Your Highness, this large allocation of troops hardly seems necessary. Expending so much of the treasury to protect the common population will displease the nobility. The nobility have their own private armies, Arnold said. And we already provide them the financial means to maintain those armies. If they still think that's not enough, let them complain. Your Highness, I beg you to reconsider. Your father will surely disapprove. Arnold's glare was chilly. Enough. You've made your opinion known. Just follow my orders. Reijou could feel the force of Arnold's enmity from here. It made her gasp even though she was nowhere near. Such a palpable tension in the air. Almost numbing. The knights accompanying her grew noticeably nervous. Arnold looked over. Across the distance, their eyes locked. He's practically challenging me to see if I have anything to add. A bit unpleasant, if you ask me. Reijou had nothing. From where she stood, Arnold's judgment was sound. She just wanted to show her support. She took a moment to decide how best to convey that, before raising her fist and clenching it, twisting her features into a slightly overblown scowl. Give them hell, Your Highness. I hope he catches my drift. Despite how deadly serious Reijou had been, Arnold frowned. Oh no, he didn't get it. Darn. What's another way to show I support him? She racked her brain trying to come up with another idea, but all it did was elicit a sigh from the prince. Then he cracked a smile. So gentle was his expression that it instantly put Reijou on guard. If she had been wearing her sword, she would have reflexively drawn it. In her defense, it was probably the emotional whiplash. He had seemed so toweringly angry with the count, and now he looked like he didn't have a care in the world. Why in the world is he looking at me like that? The suffocating tension had drained from the training grounds. Arnold's expression was smooth as he said to the count, I shall send out a missive if and when the nobility cause trouble. A missive, we need to persuade them that protecting the common citizens of this nation is to their benefit, yes. By offering them military strength and sending those knights out on patrol to keep the people safe, that should bring about a difference in their final tax yields. Will it? The count looked confused. If the people can focus on their work, tend to their families, and raise their children in an environment with ample public security, then the nobles will be thrilled when they receive more in taxes, Arnold explained patiently. The count opened his mouth to object, then hung his head in dejection. By that logic, you may be able to quell the voices of dissatisfaction. Then I'll go ahead and calculate how much it will take to persuade them. Dismissed, Arnold turned on his heel and walked away. Reijou heaved a great sigh when he was out of sight. Her shoulders ached from the tension. I'm not sure what happened just now, but I'm glad it seems to be defensive instead of warmongering. God, it's incredible how much destruction beautiful people can cause with a single look. Glancing at the knights, she saw they were smiling for some reason. They were odd smiles, rather fond, and directed her way. She cocked her head in bemusement. At any rate, I need to look into Theodore and Arnold's relationship. I hope to work on my business proposal today, but that will have to wait. With that, Reijou went off to gather intelligence. Those two. Why, I hear they've barely spent time together, even when they were small, a veteran maid told Reijou. Reijou was at the wash house, doing laundry in her maid disguise. Now that she'd donned a pair of spectacles and a brisk manner, no one was any wiser. Really, she responded casually, sorting the laundry. Even though they live in the same palace, a gaggle of maids around Reijou's mother's age chimed in. That's right. According to the footmen who serve during meals, the family never eats together. It's got to be true based on how much they complain about getting the dining hall ready. I heard that the princes won't even greet each other in the halls. That's just a rumor, though, another added. They're both so handsome, surely they'd be a picture stood together. The women giggled among themselves, the confidence of a decade's service putting them at ease. Why are they so distant if they're family? Reijou asked, feigning idle curiosity. The women cocked their own heads in puzzlement. That's a good question. Prince Theodore does seem to have some fondness for his older brother. Oh, just between you and me, I've heard he covets Prince Arnold's imperial guards as his own. Reijou paused. Little brothers always want to copy their big brothers, down to studying the same things, even. Prince Theodore does seem to love the crown prince. Is that why he wanted to talk to me? To copy Arnold? That doesn't make sense. As for the 4 princesses, they don't even live in the imperial capital. The next time they'll see each other will be at Prince Arnold's wedding. Speaking of, a maid said. That fiancé of his sure is something. Right, new girl? Reijou looked up. Huh, whatever do you mean? I haven't seen you before, so you must be a maid from her palace. I was worried when I heard she'd only taken on new girls, but all seems to be well. I think it's great that those newbies are learning the ropes so quickly. I agree. Reijou was always happy to hear her maids praised. Miss Diana and the others are great teachers. We've been learning so much. It's quite amazing how they have devised a system that could only work in that style of detached wing. Reijou had only overseen things for the first few days. The inexperienced maids were focused and dedicated, thriving in their new positions, and Diana's squad was performing well in their roles as teachers. Instead of mocking mistakes, they took it as a challenge to figure out a better teaching method for the future. When the girls were done with their work for the day, they focused on studying. Each maid-turned-teacher was figuring out her own individual style to be proud of. One excelled at detailed explanation, while another had a talent for drawings and diagrams. The inventive ones, good at scolding or praising, came up with new methods to encourage their students to follow in their footsteps. Reijou instructed the maids on their work for about 2 hours a day now, but soon she'd be able to hand the reins over to Diana completely. And once the cleaning up of the detached palace was finished, Arnold would be joining her. Reijou didn't know how she felt about that. Speaking of the detached palace, have you heard? One of the maids asked Reijou. Heard what? Prince Arnold went to call on Lady Reijou just last night. Reijou jumped with such a start that she nearly dropped her laundry. The maid's intelligence network was unparalleled, which was why she had come here for information in the first place, but she hadn't expected this. You work at the detached palace, right, new girl? Do you know about that? Lady Reijou went to bed early. She wasn't feeling well, Reijou stammered. I don't think the prince would have gone to see her if she was ill. Oh, how boring. Well, let us know if you hear anything. My daughters badger me every night for the latest gossip. To think Prince Arnold will finally be wed. All the young girls in the city are talking about it, but it's not just the young girls either, is it? We're talking about them too. All the maids laughed at that. Reijou focused on keeping her face marble smooth as she washed, determined not to let the chatty maids discover who she really was. After gathering sufficient information during her recon laundry duty, Reijou returned to her room by way of the rope still hanging down into the courtyard. Once inside, she changed her clothes and left her chambers. She proceeded to her garden, escorted by her guards. She'd once again tilled the ground Theodore had flattened with her trusty hoe, and today she was finally going to plant her seeds. Reijou pressed a finger into the moist earth up to her second joint, dropping 2 seeds into each hole she made. She then gently covered them with dirt and dampened the surface. She figured she should see sprouts within the next few days with the current weather. Daydreaming about a lovely future lush with herbs, Reijou allowed her guards to escort her back to her chambers. She moved sedately as a crown princess ought, but on the inside she was twisting with mounting anxiety. It's so late already. I have to scrub off this mud in the bath and come up with a deal for Mr. Tully. I hear there's a library in the Imperial Palace. Perhaps I can learn something about the populace there. The gender ratio, age brackets, number of shops, and I can gather information about Prince Theodore while I'm at it. She piled more and more things onto her to-do list. Diana asked me to take a look at the new teaching materials she's come up with. Also, I need to start planning the wedding and putting some strategies in place for dealing with guests from abroad. And then, Lady Reijou. Are you quite well? Yes, I'm fine. Reijou's eyes had gone glassy and far away as they climbed the stairs to her chambers, but she was determined to conquer her obligations. I can't wait to have an empty schedule. I'm going to be lazy and sleep in until noon every day so I can live a long life. All this scheming is to ensure I finally live past 20. She looked at the floor as she walked. Before she knew it, they had reached her chambers. She glanced up to see guards flanking the door. We shall stand guard here for you, my lady. Please be at ease, thank you. Reijou opened the door and stopped short. An envelope crinkled under her feet. Someone must have slid it underneath the door. Is something the matter, my lady? No, she thought for a moment, then shook her head and stepped inside in a way that kept the curious item hidden from their view. Alone at last, she picked it up. It bore the seal of the Galkine imperial family, pressed into red wax. Inside she found a card. Written in a beautiful hand were the words, "I'll tell you my secrets. Meet me in the chapel at 9 o'clock tonight." Arnold Hein in silence. Reijou put the letter back into its envelope. She then summoned Elsie to help her prepare. Dressed in a black gown, Reijou arrived at the secluded chapel at 9 o'clock, just as ordered. When she'd shown them the official seal on her letter, her guards agreed to take up positions outside the chapel walls, understanding that their mistress wished to be alone with her fiancé. Inside, the only illumination was moonlight through the stained glass windows. The man behind the letter was already waiting for her. Reijou stood at the entrance and called out a name that did not belong to her future husband. "Good evening, Prince Theodore," a soft laugh reached her. "A good evening to you as well, my lovely sister-in-law." The boy stood at the end of a long red carpet, just as she had predicted. "You don't seem surprised to see me." "I suppose you knew it was me all along," Theodore said with a smile. Reijou gave a shallow sigh. "Your forgery wasn't very good. Prince Arnold didn't sign that note. I had assumed you wouldn't have seen his signature before," Theodore said. How odd, Theodore was right, she hadn't seen it in this life. But in previous lives, Arnold had sent declarations of war to each nation. She'd never forget that document after all the times she'd seen it. Arnold's penmanship was good, but his signature was messy. The signature in the letter she had received had been comparatively too neat. "Why did you come here if you knew I was the sender? Weren't you the one who said you wouldn't put yourself in a position to be alone with another man? Oh, that must be why you haven't shut the doors. That and my guards are outside." She'd taken additional measures too, but he didn't need to know about those. Theodore played with a lock of his hair, looking bored. "I was hoping we could be friends, Lady Reijou. I have invaluable information for you. My brother has very strange tastes. Is that what you wanted to tell me?" Reijou said briskly. "Please keep it brief. The other day you claimed you knew how ruthless my brother could be." His clear voice took on a sinister note. "But you're wrong. If you did know, you wouldn't be so calm." He took a step toward Reijou. "No one in our family is close, you see. Her Majesty, our father's current empress, isn't our biological mother. She's a second wife. That's not unusual among royals, is it not? Is it per the usual, then, for a man's son to kill his previous wife?" A fierce light shone in his eyes the same color as Arnold's. He came closer, a bewitching smile growing on his face. "My brother killed our mother. But of course you know that. You know just how ruthless he is. You were enticed here by the title of crown princess, but you're better off leaving the likes of him. Do you understand? He's the sort of man who would kill his own mother." Reijou was silent. "The women who marry into our family lead unhappy lives. I hope now you understand better what I meant. This isn't a mere threat. You may very well be murdered by your husband. I was wondering what you had summoned me here to say." Reijou stared at him for a few moments, then sighed again. "Is that it?" Theodore took a stunned step back, panic briefly flickering over his face. "He murdered his own mother. How can you be so calm after hearing something so repulsive? Because I've already seen his criminal record. I know exactly what he'll do in the future. After killing his father and ascending his throne, Arnold would mobilize his nation's army. He would invade countless nations and murder their royal families as well. He would crush those who opposed him on the front lines, annihilating dissenters. Then he would kill Reijou. She'd made her choice with clear eyes. "Come what may, I will marry Prince Arnold," Theodore gaped at her. Now that I think about it, there's something I've only just learned by being here. She'd witnessed Arnold's nature up close and seen on the outside, he at least appeared decent. He was unfriendly and lukewarm, but he had a political mind that he put to work taking care of those who relied on him, as well as his citizens. And still, she did not have her answer. Why in the world does he start a war? What would go wrong in the next few years that would cause so drastic a change? Or was he just adept at hiding his monstrous nature, which would break free from its cage in 5 years? Wait, what if his hand will be forced? What if he's a pawn in someone else's game? Reijou grinned. I truly am a fool. Theodore shrank back from her smile. Haven't you noticed how Arnold has no middle name? That's because my mother and father didn't bless him at his birth. They didn't want him, he's cursed. What use is a middle name, truly? Sure, I have Irmgard, but mine is hardly worth commenting on. Prince Theodore Augustine. What are you quite finished? Reijou looked up at him, unblinking. If so, I'll be on my way. Reijou turned back on the threshold. Instead, wait, Theodore cried. You brothers have a nice chat, she finished. Oh, Theodore's voice died in his throat. At the door stood Arnold, cold radiating off him in waves. Brother, Theodore gulped. Why are you here of all places? Wait, did you come here for her? He rounded on Reijou, taking a stumbling step backward. His expression slipped from annoyance to dismay as he looked up at his brother. You don't understand, I wasn't being serious. It was just a joke. She's going to be my sister, so I just wanted to scare her a little. Theodore, the boy flinched. Did I not order you to stay away from Reijou? Theodore quailed under Arnold's gaze, the fathomless cold. His face was utterly blank, but somehow it held so much malice that it was as if a sword were pointed at Theodore's throat. Theodore hung his head low, trembling as he forced out the words, I'm sorry, brother. Arnold looked away with indifference. Reijou, let's go. Wait, your highness. I think you should speak with your brother a bit longer. There's no point, but she still didn't know Theodore's endgame. What had been the point of this? Arnold's scolding had turned him into a trembling little boy. Prince Theodore was trying to make me afraid of his brother. But why? Reijou, coming. Clearly Arnold had no desire to remain, and Reijou turned to follow him, resigned to her ignorance. Then she heard Theodore whisper, It's just as I predicted, sister. A chill ran down her spine. She looked back over her shoulder. Theodore wasn't trembling. He's laughing. The giggles racked his body as he fought to hold them back, face lit with a bewitching darkness. His beauty made Reijou's breath catch even as Theodore said in a meek voice, I'm so sorry, brother. When Arnold looked back, Theodore's expression had returned to one of contrition. I will go, though I doubt you will forgive me. And sister, I'm sorry for frightening you. I promise in the future I will treat you with all the proper respect due to my brother's wife. Theodore bowed deeply to Reijou and smiled at his brother. Good night, brother. I'm so glad to speak to you after such a long time. Theodore brushed by Arnold on his way out the door, leaving them with nothing but the trembling echoes of that unsettling smile. The two were alone in the chapel now. Arnold broke the silence first. I believe I told you the same thing, Reijou. That's right, I wasn't supposed to talk to Theodore either. He used your name to summon me, I couldn't just ignore it. And I expected that you'd find time in your busy schedule to accompany me, as if I would ignore the reply to a letter I never even sent. It made sense. After receiving Theodore's forged letter, Reijou had summoned Elsie and written a reply. Thank you for the invitation, Your Highness. I shall conduct myself to the chapel at 9:30 tonight, as you have specified. She'd given herself a half-hour alone with Theodore, but Arnold had arrived 15 minutes early. I'm thankful he did. I just wish he hadn't had to hear his brother slander him. Something wrong? Reijou began to shake her head but stopped. Maybe she could just ask. Why did he say those things about you? That you're ruthless. Arnold glanced away briefly. Probably because it's true. I've killed countless people on the battlefield. I am not delicate in my manner. My brutality is known far and wide. I know that. That's not what I meant. I could learn that anywhere, she said. Then what is it you want to know? She wasn't sure how to word this. Your heart, this was something only Arnold could tell her. My heart, I have heard of your many great feats during the previous war. And I've seen what you were like in battle when those bandits attacked our carriage. But you didn't kill them. Reijou's theory at the time had been that it was because they'd been attacked by foreign countrymen. But she doubted that the diabolical Emperor Arnold Hein of her memory would care about that. But after weeks of observation, she wasn't sure of anything anymore. I was wondering what you were talking about. A shadow fell over his blue eyes. It appears I've gone too easy on you. He reached toward her and his black-gloved hands slowly wrapped around her neck. If you want to survive in this palace, you'll disabuse yourself of this naivete. His fingers dug into her throat. It was only a threat of pressure, but it would take only a bit more to strangle her. And yet Reijou was unafraid. I believe in my own observations and conclusions. What are you saying? You've never seen me on the battlefield. Be that as it may, Reijou said, I believe that the person who cares about my desires is the real you. What a foolish thing to say, he said in a low, husky voice. I brought you here to use you, all the more so then if that's the case. Reijou gently placed her hand on top of his. She didn't try to pull it away, instead she pressed down, exerting pressure on her own throat. You aren't ruthless at all, husband. Arnold grimaced, breathing out a huff of annoyance. She expected him to push her away, but they just stood there, eyes locked. The moment stretched on, neither of them moving. It was Arnold who broke the silence. Where does this confidence come from? This determination, Reijou frowned, puzzled. What do you mean? Sometimes you get this look in your eye. Like you're meeting me in the field. It was as if he were looking through her to the past. Reijou could say nothing. Arnold took his hand from her neck, cupping her cheek instead. The moonlight shone through the stained glass window, casting the shadow of his lashes over his face. He brushed his thumb against the corner of her eye. You have the gaze of someone ready to die for what she believes in, who will fight for it with every last breath. You look like someone who still believes life is worth living. Reijou found herself unable to move. All she could do was look up at Arnold. In her eyes, Arnold seemed to be gazing past her, to wars fought long ago, far away. Perhaps he was seeing the faces of the people he had killed. Having to end the life of someone like that, he said, is what I fear most in the world. Reijou didn't say a word. So he was afraid. Sometimes. She knew it. She'd known it all along. No matter what the past contained or the future held, the man who stood before her was not a merciless killer. Reijou swallowed, finding her voice again. Sometimes I feel like I don't belong in this world anymore. It was an incoherent confession, but she said it anyway. She didn't know how else to answer his question. He waited for her to continue. Reijou pushed herself on, adding lies to the truth she couldn't offer him. I've had dreams of watching myself die. But I'm not dreaming now. I'm here, breathing and alive. But despite knowing I'm awake, I am still very afraid sometimes. What are you afraid of? Reijou breathed out. That I'm already dead. That my life ended in that instant and this world is nothing but an endless dream. As soon as she spoke, Reijou felt a hard pressure on her chest. What's this I'm feeling? Instantly it clicked, she wasn't lying. Deep down there was a part of her that believed this. She didn't want this life to end in death. Her seventh life would be the one she survived. She wanted to do her best to keep on living. But she'd thought that in her past lives as well. She'd lived through the second and third, the fourth, the fifth and sixth life, always with that truth lurking in the innermost depths of her heart. No matter what she did, in 5 years it would all be over. Perhaps this world wasn't even real. And once her thoughts drifted in that direction, all she felt was paralyzing fear. Stop it. Reijou squeezed her eyes shut. The fear means nothing. I'll turn it into strength. It doesn't matter. Fear crept up on you faster the longer you stood still, so she looked up at Arnold again. I've made up my mind, she told Arnold. I don't care if this life is a dream or if I'm destined for some awful end, I won't run away. Reijou, I'm not what you think, she said. I'm not a warrior. But I am resolute in my determination to be your wife. Destiny would likely never lead her down this path again. After living her life over and over again, she'd experienced firsthand how difficult it was to force events to play out identically. She had to do her utmost now. To stop the war, to save herself. And to save Arnold, who might not desire a future soaked in blood after all. That's why I want to understand your heart, she added. He let out a short, scornful laugh, almost inhuman. His hand slid from her cheek down to her chin. With his other arm, he drew her close by her waist. Then a pair of soft lips met hers. Reijou gasped into his kiss, mind struggling to keep up. An eternity seemed to pass before he drew away. He whispered, "You're a fool," but his voice was gentle, full of sympathy, as if he were trying to persuade a child. And it was with a distinct note of loneliness that he said, "You don't need to be resolute to become my wife."